across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, 3 minutes past 6. Happy Wednesday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle, who returns tomorrow. A packed show for you. And breaking this morning, Andy Burnham blasts the Iron Lady. And he says he will reverse Thatcher's legacy. So is Britain about to go full socialist if he wins power? Meanwhile, the bad headlines just keep on coming for the King of the North as questions emerge about his handling of the grooming gangs scandal and his ultra-woke position on the definition of a woman. Meanwhile, this morning, HS2 tops £100 billion. We've got the inside story on this national scandal. And alleged rapes on Channel 4's #1 flagship entertainment show. Has reality TV gone too far? And my question to you this morning at 4 minutes past 6 on a very bright Wednesday is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? It's your choice. 03444991000. Because it's going to be Starmer or it's going to be Burnham to lead this country for the foreseeable future. Who would your preference be? Has the halo already slipped for the King of the North? Is Starmer the lesser of two evils? Producer Christian, is he the devil we know? That's what they say, isn't it? Better the devil we know. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? You decide. 03444991000. That is the national poll that we're conducting this morning. My phone number is 03444991000. Give me a call. And I'm going to put you on the radio, and I'm going to put you on the telly, and I'm going to expose you to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of viewers and listeners. Tommy's taking your calls. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leaves a voice note. Producer Christian loves a voice note. We've got the dream team this morning. We've got engineer Dave, who we have stolen from TalkSport. He's pressing the buttons, and I can't lie, I've never sounded better. And directing our TV output, the one, the only, Luke. If you want to see the show, as well as hear it, head over to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. As the saying goes, let's talk. It's all about your opinions this morning. I want to hear what you think about this country, about the direction of travel, about who should lead this country, who should be the incumbent of number 10. Because the truth is that Labour are not going to call an election in the next few months. It ain't going to happen. Turkeys do not vote for Christmas. So it's going to be Labour for the next 2 to 3 years. Who should be in number 10? You decide, Starmer or Burnham. Here are the front pages. The Sun newspaper, rape claims rock Channel 4. New series canned over scandal. Plea for victims to contact cops. Married at first sight axed. The Times, stand firm, Starmer may still be in Downing Street in the new year. Yikes! He's here to stay. Milk, egg and bread prices could be frozen. And 9 times 6, the most difficult test in the Times tables. Daily Express, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch slams Labour over rising unemployment and cost of living. Energy bills to soar by £200 in another failed promise. I'm so confused. I thought we were going to save £300 a year. Wasn't that the promise from Ed Miliband? And I'm not going to lie. I was so excited about the 300 quid that I was saving. I took Mrs. Dolan to a very nice outfitters and I bought her a flock of sheep. I bought her a frock. And I said, that is from Ed Miliband. Well, he can frock off because now energy prices are through the roof. Daily Mail, exclusive leaked tape. Burnham said that men who identify as women should be able to use female toilets and said only a small minority object. What a bigoted and stupid man he is. I don't think I want Andy Burnham to be Prime Minister. I might be tempted to stick with Starmer. I mean, we know he's awful. He's the worst Prime Minister ever. But would Burnham be worse? 03444991000. crazy woke, attacking Margaret Thatcher, who transformed the country. Be afraid, be very afraid. The Guardian, UK must get used to being a hot country, climate advisors warn. The Guardian are just obsessed, aren't they, with the climate grift. I'm so sick of it. It's an industry for The Guardian and their ilk. The I newspaper, cabinet ministers woo Burnham in race for top jobs. He's such a charlatan. I'm not having it. I'm so sorry, Christian. I don't buy this whole King of the North thing. I think he's king useless. That was quite good, wasn't it, for 8 minutes past 6 in the morning. I've not even had my coffee yet. Daily Mirror, singer's health bombshell, Kylie, my secret cancer battle. The Daily Telegraph, Reeves tells shops to cap food prices. Welcome to communism. And The Star, Top Guns win Prem title. Congratulations to Arsenal, who are the champions of England. Folks, so many stories to get through, and I'll be doing it this morning in the company of one of my favourite political commentators, former special advisor Charlie Rowley. Hello, Charlie.
Morning, Mark. Hello.
And we'll start with a sporting story because you're a big Arsenal fan.
Oh, I am, Mark. And
Have you been to bed?
I have been to bed, but it was very difficult because I did watch the match last night between Man City and Bournemouth, and that went on to about 10 o'clock. But then, of course, the endless doom scrolling on social media to see the fans come out and surround the Emirates Stadium, surround the streets of London, the celebrations into the night. I wish I was there. I had a bit of FOMO, I have to say. But my commitment to you this morning outweighed that.
Well, I support the other team in North London who aren't doing so well, and that would be Tottenham. It's a big moment because it's 2 decades, I think, Arsenal have waited for this trophy, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Over
22 years. Wow. And if you think about it, I mean, to put that into perspective, I mean, I've been going since I was 6 when my dad first took me to a match, but I was 14 when Arsenal last won the league. I'm now 36. That is a whole player's career that has gone by without winning the Premier League. So, not that I would have made it as a footballer, but, you can imagine, a young kid starting out 14 in the academy, going on to play professional football, and then ending their career at 36, 37. No one would have seen a trophy lifted, so I'm chuffed.
Well, I've seen your calf muscles and they're very impressive. The Daily Telegraph, Rachel Reeves tells shops to cap food prices. Just days ago, figures in Westminster were condemning the SNP for such a policy. Now it looks like Westminster is entertaining the idea of market controls. This is not progress, is it?
No. And market interventionism like this, it never works. It just never works. Even if it sounds as though you just ask supermarkets, can you cap a few prices of certain goods here, whether it's milk and eggs or whatever, basic goods that households, need, and therefore it saves them a few pennies. They'll just put the costs onto other products. Other people will be hit by what they buy in the supermarket, because supermarkets do need to make profits. Also because they need to then pay their suppliers or pay for the imports, which obviously with fuel prices through the roof, how are you going to get those goods to the shelves in the first place? We need to pay our farmers even more than what they currently get. I think they get a terrible deal, our farmers. So if you start capping prices at the supermarkets can't import goods or pay for the produce from local farming. The whole system collapses.
Most definitely. Also, there's a lot of focus on the impact on inflation of the war in Iran, but a lot of the inflationary pressures in this country are self-inflicted and were quite evident at the beginning of the year. Before the war in Iran was a twinkle in Donald Trump's eye.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen...
We've had inflationary policies, haven't we, for the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-inflicted, as you say. The Chancellor stood at that dispatch box 2 years in a row and said she was putting up taxes, she was putting up national insurance contributions, she was putting up business rates. That leads to unemployment.
Inflation busting pay rises in the public sector?
Absolutely. Where they continue to go on strike, by the way. I know the TfL or the RMT called off their latest set of strikes, but how many times do we talk about? But I think they're planned for some time in the future, so they haven't gone away totally. And how often do we hear about the BMA and the doctor strike? Again, planning a new set of strikes, I think, over the summer. The whole point of those pay rises was to stop all of that, to get the public services under control, which they've clearly not been able to do.
And of course, West Streeting's previous deal didn't contain any promises to change working practices or efficiencies. It was a completely non-binding agreement.
Yeah, and that's why...
No reforms.
No reforms. And that's why, the unions are able to flex their muscles and take us back to the 70s, where the unions are the paymasters of the Labour Party.
Worth noting as well, unfortunately, one of the most egregious aspects of this government is that they don't just not understand enterprise. I think they detest it. And they think that anyone that's got a business is somehow rolling in cash. Even Sainsbury's, for example, their profit margin is around 2 to 2.5%, which is negligible. And they've faced a lot of recent costs. You mentioned, particularly, I think, that first budget with the national insurance tax raid and the red tape and the workers' rights package and the minimum wage. Their costs have gone up as a result of Rachel Reeves's policies. And now she tells them, don't charge as much for a pint of milk. You can't have it both ways.
No, exactly. And that's why, this government's got a lot to answer for, because it is putting that pressure on businesses, and it's understanding that it's business that is the bedrock of the UK economy. It's small and medium-sized enterprises that, generate the cash that goes into the Treasury coffers to be able to fund public services. It's not borrowing, it's not more spending, it's not the higher taxes that generates that growth, that key word growth. Remember that? The Labour told us all about.
The G word. It's a four-letter word for this government, isn't
it? Yes. But it's chaotic, and that's why you then see also people leaving the country, millionaires, people that are the wealth creators, people that can do business abroad, to inject that investment into the UK. They up sticks and go elsewhere.
Well, do you want me to give you the killer stat of the last few days, which has been underreported in the media, but I'm using this vast platform here at Talk to share this information. Sunday Times Rich List, 1 in 6 from last year's list has left the country. Charlie, 1 in 6. And the left think that's a win. Good riddance. These people are insane.
Yep.
In the absence of the 1 in 6 from the Rich List, you and I and my beautiful listeners and viewers must fill the gap. We have to cover the taxes that the rich people were paying who are now in Monaco, Paris, Dubai and New York.
Exactly. And it just highlights the politics of envy. The left seem to have this ongoing and everlasting chip on their shoulder where anybody that does well should be taxed or should be punished or should be, being taxed even more to spend on public services or to spend on whatever it is that the government, a central government, thinks is better able to spend that money. That's totally wrong. It's not government that creates wealth. It's business, it's enterprise, it's innovation, it's people who are talented and lots of people who come from absolutely nothing, but have a talent, have a skill, are developed, have the opportunity, and then it can become high earners.
And the left don't get it. They actually did get it under Tony Blair, which is that if you love bomb the rich and create a business-friendly environment, you get amazing tax receipts, you get huge GDP, and with all of that national income, give it to poor people. That's fine. Have a growing economy, and then give it to poor people.
Yep.
But the left don't get it. They also don't get the high immigration and the boats are really bad for poor people. Make it make sense. That's why I think the right have got a huge opportunity to become the political movement that represents the working class and, ironically, the poor.
Absolutely. And those two very key things.
Help the poor, vote right wing.
Yeah, exactly.
You can make that argument because the focus is growth, which is national income. Give the money to the poor people.
Yeah. Totally right. And that's, look at why the Tories got kicked out in the first place. It didn't tackle illegal immigration. It didn't tackle the small boat crisis. It didn't bring taxes down to help people at the lower end keep more of the money that they earn. Everybody keeping more of the money that they earn that they can reinvest in the economy. Taxes were too high. Immigration was too high. The Tories got equals. The Tories getting kicked out. Under this government, taxes are even higher. Borrowing is even higher. Spending even higher. The small boats crossings even higher. Add all that together equals Labour, hopefully, you would have thought, getting kicked out. And who does that leave a gap for? You're right. A new, reinvigorated centre-right party, united of right-wing parties. If the Tories now have changed their tune, or actually what they believe in, if they can deliver what they actually say they believe in, then that could change the fortunes of this country for the better.
When a country is very rich, it's really good news for the poor people in that country. And I think that's got to be the economic discussion going forward, is if you have a focus on national income, it's tremendous for those at the bottom end of the ladder. A good example would be the United States, which has vast inequality, but it doesn't matter because the outcomes for those at the bottom of the economic ladder are far better than any working class people across Western Europe. And that is the point, that America contains opportunity. And even someone, you know, just like a junior manager at a Wendy's in America is far better off than the equivalent here in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely, and valued, and you know, I know they have a big tipping culture in the US, which we don't have here.
And I think their wages work out around almost 100% higher.
Yeah, and but you're absolutely right, and it plays into that American sort of opportunity, the dream of sort of, you know, having a job, but having the opportunity, keeping more of the money that you earn, you know, but there's pride in your job, there's pride in your workplace. You know, as you say, you could be working whatever job it is in the US, but they deliver it because they want to be there, they want to do a good job, because they know that actually doing a good job is linked to performance and pay and opportunity going forward, because you could get promoted if you do good. Here, you can just claim benefits. And you can earn more on benefits than even bothering going to work in a local supermarket or at a local restaurant, which is ridiculous.
And fair play to the Conservatives who unearthed that other shocking statistic which came out last week. 600,000 households better off at home not working than going to work, which is a scandal. Good morning, says an unnamed texter. Capping milk and bread is exactly what Harold Wilson did in the 70s, and that's just before we went bust. Here we go again. Price controls, Bill in Cheshire. So having spent nearly 2 years shafting the retail sector with onerous regulation, overtaxation, minimum wage, business rates and national insurance increases, they now want to artificially control the markets through price controls. Who are they trying to kid? Gary in Powys. Mark, tell Charlie not to worry about waiting 22 years to win the league. Of course, Charlie's very happy because Arsenal are champions of England. It could be much worse. He could be supporting Spurs and have waited 65 years and still waiting. Gary, you're absolutely right. And of course, the great worry is that we might even go down. Bruce, good morning, Mark. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Well, this in itself just shows how bad a situation we're in. Shouldn't be asking who is best, but no, things are so bad, we ask who is worse. Oh, now things are so bad, we ask who is worse. It's not a joke. This is our great country going down the pan, and we just smile and wave and say, can we do anything? No, we can't, and we shrug. Let's not be defeated, says Bruce. Keep that feedback coming. Shall we slam a voice note? Because this morning's question is a simple one. Who's worse, Burnham or Starmer? Here's Wayne.
Morning, Mark. It's Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham. It's a bit of a bad choice, really, Starmer or Burnham. It's like saying, what sexually transmitted disease would you prefer? The answer, quite frankly, is neither. Keep up the good work, Mr. Dolan. You're a top bloke.
Oh, Wayne, you're a top bloke. Takes one to know one. I'm just pondering, Charlie, which STD I'd most like to have. Of course, you've had all of them, so which is the worst?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in fact, I'm straight up the clinic after.
Glad you are. Well, I saw you having a swab in the bathrooms, and it did surprise me. It raised an eyebrow.
Yes, you're absolutely. But you're right. I was thinking about this, not sexually transmitted diseases, but the question that you're posing is.
I heard your new girlfriend is called chlamydia. Is that right? You're getting married in the summer.
We're getting married.
What a fragrant young lass she is.
She's been very popular in the past.
She gets around.
But she's the question about what's worse. I was thinking about this, as I say, the other day, and it reminded me of the Brexit days, where the question was, or where Theresa May used to say, no deal is better than a bad deal.
Yeah.
And she would threaten to walk away from the negotiation table of the EU. And I think a Prime Minister that has no direction, like Starmer, is better than bad direction under Burnham. I know that sounds as though we would be still rudderless, we'd be drifting, we'd be up in arms day in, day out about the direction of this country or lack of direction, but the idea that we could just then tick down the clock like the last few minutes of a Champions League final. You never know that Arsenal might be winning next week. Over optimism.
Don't rub it in. Back to the chlamydia.
We could wait for the next general election and then give the Labour government a good kicking before Burnham may do irreversible damage to this country if we go in a bad direction.
I tend to agree with you. Well, of course, the race for Makerfield is now really starting to hot up. In just a moment, we're going to hear the campaign videos of Robert Kenyon, who is the Reform candidate, a plumber and a man of the people, and then Andy Burnham, the self-appointed King of the North. Well, Burnham has attacked Margaret Thatcher. We've got more on that in just a moment. Our question this morning at 6:22 is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? This is Talk Breakfast.
not a wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
.24. Happy Wednesday, one and all. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle, who returns tomorrow. And it's fascinating, isn't it, what's happening in UK politics? It looks now for the UK like a choice between Sir Keir Starmer or potentially Andy Burnham in number 10. Which is the best option? Who's worse? Who's better? Let me know your thoughts. 03444 499 1000 on Andy Burnham. Here's a voice note from Hev.
Burnham, yeah, right. Well, if he wins the by-election, which I very much doubt he will, but if he did, I reckon Starmer would call a general election. Because he doesn't want to be ousted. He wants to play boss. He wants to be the boss. He wants to be the big man. So that's the only thing left that he will be able to control. To me, this is like a general election. I am so looking forward to it.
Oh, well, that's very interesting. Charlie, with your knowledge of the mechanics of Westminster politics, is it conceivable that Starmer could press the nuclear button and call an election?
I think as much as he might want to hang on and, say, look, actually, no, I'm not having this internal party warfare and I'm not going to be ditched by my own party. I'm going to go to the country and let the people decide, But as much as that might be on his mind, I don't think he is able to, because the party that's been elected, the Labour Party, has a huge majority. And so it's when, you can't command a majority that you then go to a general election, really, when governments sort of collapse. His government, as an individual, will collapse, but there are other people there that are able to step up and get the command of the House of Commons in order to form a government. So you can't just hop in a car and go to the King and say, right, actually, I want a general election, because the King might sort of say, well, hold on, haven't you got, quite a sizable majority? Why do we need to put the country through it? Actually, and so I think it would be, it's not possible, really.
So you've disappointed Hev there, but an election is coming. Who's going to be fighting it in 2 or 3 years' time? Does Starmer cling on? Could it be Andy Burnham? I do wonder whether if Burnham doesn't make it in Makerfield, no pun intended, that actually we'll have political stasis. It's quite conceivable that in the absence of Andy Burnham in a leadership contest, Starmer clings on. Burnham wants to reverse decline in the north, says Peter. Well, Manchester is in the north, isn't it? So what's he been doing? Will says, good morning, Mark. I'm no fan of Margaret Thatcher. But when are politicians going to stop blaming a woman who left office 36 years ago? Well, Andy Burnham has slammed the legacy of Margaret Thatcher in his campaign video for Makerfield, saying he will reverse her legacy. Take a listen.
It was growing up in and around these streets that I saw what Thatcher's government did to places like this, the deindustrialisation, the draining away of economic, social and political power. It left places like Makerfield behind, and Britain has been on that path for the last 40 years, and it was the sense of injustice I got about the way this country is run that took me towards politics.
What all of these experiences have taught me is that Westminster doesn't work for people in this part of the world and communities like this across the UK.
Now, a couple of things stand out about that video. If you're listening on the radio and not watching on Talk TV, he's managed to find the one sunny day of the year in Manchester, in Greater Manchester, or that area, Wigan, which is quite spectacular, unless he's done it in a studio and it's all, green screen. But why do you think Andy Burnham has chosen to target Margaret Thatcher in his campaign for a constituency in 2026?
Well, it's an interesting choice, as you say, because I'm pretty sure that constituency has had a Labour MP for all of that time. So, You can blame the government for one thing, but also responsibility, I imagine, would lay at the doorstep of the Labour Party, the Labour Party's MPs that have held that seat. So including Josh Simons, that's standing down to make way for Andy Burnham. He's effectively saying, well, this guy hasn't done a very good job representing Makerfield, and neither had his predecessors. So it plays to a particular part of, I think, the North West, who traditionally, haven't voted Conservative, that didn't like Margaret Thatcher, where industry, as they saw it, was completely deindustrialised and wiped out, and communities there lost a lot of jobs and a lot of investment and income, and those communities were, in their view, absolutely destroyed. So tapping into that, I think, history of what people feel towards the right, whether it's Margaret Thatcher, whether it's reform, I think he's trying to just stoke that idea in people's minds to be able to say, look, Labour hasn't delivered either over that 40-year period, but under me, Andy Burnham, as your MP, as someone who wants to change the Labour Party, to get back to why you've all voted Labour for so long and why this constituency has always been Labour, because we do really represent working people. Here's my message to you. So I think that's what he's trying to do, is just to reignite that sort of Thatcher detestation that might be in people's minds historically.
This is cheap, cynical politics, isn't it? As my brilliant listener, Will, there has pointed out, she left office 36 years ago. Who's he kidding? Labour are in power for 13 years. Who else is he going to blame? Is he going to have harsh words for Benjamin Disraeli? Is he furious about Sir Robert Peel? Or any of these other iconic? Churchill maybe deserves a bit of a talking down. I mean, this is Andy Burnham, isn't it? To a T. He's a crafty politician. He knows which buttons to press.
Yeah, and I think, look, he might have missed a bit of a trick, because we've seen how volatile politics is. People have been prepared in places that never voted Conservative before, certainly in 2019, voted for Boris, voted for Brexit, voted for, that red wall to turn blue. People then swung the other way to Labour. The polls are very favourable towards reform in lots of parts of the country. So people are prepared to change their minds because of the two-party system, probably because of the Punch and Judy of one blaming the other for however many years. I think there might be a lot of people sitting there watching that video thinking, why on earth is he talking about Thatcher? She was 40 years ago, and we haven't had any change since. Now is the time to vote for another party that actually might just deliver for the people of Makerfield.
Most definitely. I also wonder whether he's picked the wrong foe in Mrs Thatcher, because many would argue she was the last truly, truly great Prime Minister that we had. And that actually you're talking about someone that transformed the fortunes of the entire country. Earlier, you and I were discussing that if a country has a high national income, fantastic GDP, if a country is rich, then it's really good news for the poorest in that country. It was ever thus. Well, we had economic growth of 5.4% in 1987. That's why Margaret Thatcher won 3 election landslides. She won a war, but more importantly, she presided over the economic transformation of the country. We were the sick man of Europe in the late 1970s. At one point, flirting with seeing the IMF to keep the lights on, to borrow money. By 87, we were an economic powerhouse. So, and this has been picked up on by Andrew Neil. And if you caught his dust up with Andy Burnham on X yesterday.
I haven't. I saw
Very
an exchange, but I haven't.
It's all kicked off and it's gone crazy viral. Andy Burnham questions why Andrew Neil, thinks that Mrs Thatcher's legacy wasn't too bad. Andy Burnham said, "You need to get out of London, Andrew. You've clearly got no idea how much people here are struggling. And yes, a lot of it can be traced back to Margaret Thatcher." Andrew Neil replies, "Nice to hear from you, Andy. Thanks for the by-election," he says. "We live for such things." He's got great dry wit, hasn't he?
Yes.
He says, "I'm in no doubt life is tough for lots of folk in Makerfield, but it's hardly a poster child for urban squalor or deprivation. Thatcher left power in 1990. She was followed by 7 years of un-Thatcher Major and 13 years of Labour government, of which you were a part. So it's quite a stretch to blame her for any continuing woes, unless we blame Labour for failing to put anything right. On the other hand," he says, "in the houses that you were walking past in that video were bought by the tenants under Thatcher's right to buy scheme, which has given them some pride in place and some wealth that they once could only have dreamed of accumulating. I assume your pledge to renationalise housing does not include taking these homes back into public ownership, even if that would constitute a proper radical reversal of the Thatcherism that you're somewhat bizarrely campaigning against. I think Andrew Neil's called him out here.
Well, I think he has. I mean, he's absolutely right. And that just shows, actually, when we think that Keir Starmer hasn't got the political antennae or the ability to take on his opponents or actually have any kind of sense of direction, Andy Burnham is trying to pick a fight from the ages, and he's obviously been called out, as you say, by Andrew Neil, that's quite quickly and quite easily put him in his place.
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Thatcher's legacy. Is it still relevant to invoke her memory and her legacy? And also, was she a good Prime Minister? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Our big question of the day is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? 0344 499 1000. Here's a voice note from Matt.
Morning, Mark and Mr. Rowley. Matt in Hove here. Having to choose between Starmer and Rowley, it's at times like this when you realise we really are in the toilet, aren't we, in the UK? Starmer, clearly one of the worst Prime Ministers we've ever had. And he's so bad that the Labour Party are now falling over themselves about Andy Burnham, thinking he's the King of the North. What on earth is that sort of title? He's lost 2 leadership contests already to be a leader of the Labour Party. He's just as crap as the rest of them. No wonder the UK is in the toilet. It's so pathetic.
Matt, thank you for that heartfelt voice note. We love the voice notes. Keep them coming, and the texts as well. Next up, could a local plumber win Makerfield for reform? 6:35. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Nice, that distinction. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. You are going to be brought up to speed on the big stories of the day. I'm Mark Dolan, in for the fantastic Jeremy Kyle. We've got a packed show, and we're being led by none other than Christian Mitchell, who, let me tell you, is comfortably the most experienced producer in commercial speech radio in the UK. So, I mean, this is it, folks. You come to the best place. And by the way, folk are watching in record numbers on YouTube. So if you want to see the show, we love the radio, but if you want to see it, head over to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. And you'll see Charlie Rowley, who is a former Conservative special advisor. And Charlie, I'd like to draw your attention to this video, campaign video, on the part of Robert Kenyon, who is a local plumber who's campaigning as Reform's prospective parliamentary candidate in Makerfield. Let's take a listen.
I was born in Makerfield. If I was elected, I'd be the first person born in the constituency to become the MP. I don't think any MP that's ever stood in Makerfield was actually born in the area. For Andy Burnham, Makerfield will be a stepping stone, but for me it's the only place I've ever wanted to represent. People in this area, in this constituency, have been taken advantage of for far too long, and it's time to take a stand. The Makerfield constituency deserves a local champion.
Charlie Rowley, what did you make of that campaign by Robert Kenyon, who seems like a really decent guy?
He does, and we don't know a lot about him apart from what we've seen in that video. So time will tell if there's anything on him that will come out in the campaign.
The Guardian will be trawling his social media as we speak.
They'll be trawling everything. So let's see how it plays out. But on the surface of it, I don't think Reform could have picked a better candidate, someone that is genuinely local, someone that is clearly hard-working, a plumber that actually knows the area, that wants to do better for the area, that would actually be a local voice for Makerfield and the people of Makerfield, and that is a good thing. That is something that I think people of Makerfield would want to have. But that is obviously the ultra opposite to what they've got in the opposition, or who they're up against, which is effectively the Labour Party candidate, Andy Burnham, who is there to be parachuted into the seat only to make it to number 10. So he won't be a local MP. He might have the ability to reference Makerfield, obviously. He might try to appeal to the people of Makerfield by saying, oh, well, look, I'll be the Prime Minister. Of course I'll be able to do all these wonderful things for the area. But the reality is, Andy Burnham is using this, as he said by his own admission, this is a chance for him to save the Labour Party. So we know what his priorities lie. And I think that's why this is going to be such an exciting by-election. It is critical, I think, for the country, because they've got to get it right. Do the people of Makerfield think, and they should be thinking for the country as much as their own constituency and their own local community, do they want to have Andy Burnham parachuted in to effectively just take over the Labour Party to become Prime Minister, where he says he wants to take, and in his lifetime he said he'd like to see the UK back into the EU, where he's coming up with all these other policies that are being reported in the paper today, where he has different views, which I think, allowing men into women's toilets, which I don't think the people of Makerfield would be particularly happy with. Or do they want a local candidate, a local champion who will actually be able to be a voice on the backbenches and stand up for their constituents? And they don't want to take part in what is this circus, I think, of a Labour Party stitch-up.
And no sooner have we mentioned The Guardian trawling through this guy's social media. Well, Metro got there first. They've said, hold my beer. And it's been revealed, and I don't know if he's going to come back from this, Robert Kenyon, but he once had a beer with Charlie Rowley, so I think he's done. And I believe that Nigel will make an announcement about his replacement later in the morning. No, in all seriousness, we've got a story from Metro, actually, reporting that this candidate said that the King should open up Buckingham Palace for asylum seekers. Now, I think that what Robert Kenyon was saying there is making a sort of deliberately provocative point, which is that the boats crisis is such a disaster. Maybe the sort of rich elite should be dealing with this problem themselves. I mean, others have said that there should be asylum hotels in Islington and Hampstead, because that might wake up the woke left if they had to live with the consequences of migration. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a big smoking gun. However, he's also quoted on social media as saying that Asian men assault white people en masse. He's referred to an invasion of foreign criminals, and he was found to have been friends with the leader of a far-right party on Facebook. Is any of this significant?
I don't think it is. I think, people will want to trawl through everybody's, who do they follow on social media? Who are they friends with? I mean,
that thing
Facebook,
about if you follow someone on X, or that is not in any way a validation, is it?
No, or an endorsement, or a way in which you are all of a sudden, bosom buddies, and you are in cahoots day in, day out, and plotting whatever it is.
Some people automatically follow back when they're followed, don't they?
Exactly. So I don't think that's a smoking gun at all. I think actually the way in which we are in today's society, people don't necessarily want their politicians. And again, this is the dividing line between Labour and Reform, the Labour Party candidate, Reform's candidate, because Andy Burnham is seen as part of the political establishment. He should be a professional politician in that sense. That's how he's viewed. Yeah. I mean, he should be. I mean, he was sitting around the cabinet table during that 40 years of which he was critical of, as Andrew Neil, you brilliantly said, you pointed out. But I think people are more interested in, more prepared in putting their faith in someone, or want to see anyway, politicians and people put their name forward for public office who genuinely care about their community. They don't have to get all the language right. They don't have to be the most articulately speaking. They don't have to be the most diplomatic. If they're getting a message across, if people can understand what they mean, even if they haven't quite got the words in all the right order, and what clearly Robert was saying during that, I think, and I took from that, was that we do have people that have come into this country illegally that have committed crimes that can't be deported because of the court's problems, maybe because we haven't left the ECHR or because the appeals process takes very long. And we're seeing day in, day out stories in the national newspapers. This isn't made up stuff on X or fake news, as the Donald will have you believe at times. You know, these are stories where foreign criminals or foreign people have come into the country, have committed crimes in this country and can't be deported. Now, and, you know, you can reference also the Pakistani grooming gang scandal. You know, this should have been a national inquiry.
Yeah.
Why there is a disproportionate level of those crimes taking place within a particular community. So the Pakistani, a particular subsect of the Pakistani community committing crimes over and above the level of population that we have in this country against white British girls. That's something that needs to be called out for. That's something which required a national inquiry, which should have happened immediately. I don't know why Jess Phillips decided not to, although there's probably many reasons for that. But so that what I take Robert is referencing. Now, people will say, well, he didn't quite articulate it in the best way. I don't care. His heart's in the right place, and he still wants to be a local champion for local people representing a local community. I think that's okay by me.
That's right. And the ethnicity of the grooming gangs was an aggravating factor, and these were, to a considerable degree, racially motivated crimes. And it was the ethnicity of these monsters that protected them and allowed them to continue their crimes. And that's why, as you said, we needed a national inquiry, and being called racist for focusing on ethnicity is completely unfair, completely disingenuous, because actually the ethnicity was part of the crime. Fascinating, isn't it? We've also got Andy Burnham's position on men identifying as females using female toilets. This is going to go down like not that well, I would have thought, in Makerfield. And similarly, his desire at some point for the UK to rejoin the EU. How do you see this race playing out? Because I think you've got different factors, haven't you? In by-elections and also at a general election at constituencies, having recognition, having profile does help the candidate. If you're a household name politician, you are going to get more votes. Is that enough to get him across the line? Who's going to win this?
Well, I mean, that's the question, and you know, Christian and I were talking about it outside, and you know, I have a suspicion that Andy Burnham might just pip it because of that name recognition, and if he's able to win the argument by saying and convincing enough people, which I don't think will be the case in terms of what he will actually end up doing, but I think he will end up convincing enough people to say, look, I will be your local champion as the Prime Minister of the country. I will give this constituency the status. Never before has anybody from Makerfield gone on to become Prime Minister. I can be that man, that champion for you, even though the reality is he won't, and he won't be there particularly often. I suspect he might just sneak it, but you never know. And this is why I think this by-election is fascinating. It is a binary choice between having someone that is, as I said before, going to be parachuted in, become the MP potentially, and go on to lead the Labour Party, or someone who is a local candidate. Now, it doesn't matter whoever that local candidate is, by the way, in terms of the opposition. In this case, it's Reform. They came second, very close second at the last general election. They are the ones that are ahead in the polls nationally. Whoever the opposition party could have been in that circumstance, whether it could have been the Conservatives, even if it was the Greens. My question and my beef with this whole by-election is the fact that it is totally separate to any other by-election we've had before. This is a referendum on either the Labour Party. It's a clear choice. Do you want Burnham to become the Prime Minister or not? And if you don't want Burnham to become the Prime Minister, you vote for the alternative, the opposition, the closest party that's going to be able to stop that from happening. In this case, it's Reform. That is why you're seeing people asking for this uniting of the right. So they're asking for the Tory parties not to field a candidate who've never won the seat. They've got no skin in the game. They're not going to win the seat, but they did get 4,000 votes. Now, the Tory party argues, well, actually, we need people to vote Conservative if that's what they want. There are differences between Reform and the Conservative Party, And there absolutely are. And at a general election, it would be absolutely right for the Tory party to field a candidate, because that's when we're having these policy debates at a national level. This has got nothing to do with that. This is literally about, do you want Burnham in to become the Prime Minister or not? And so that's why there's a call to unite the right. And it's similarly, on the other hand, that's why you've got Caroline Lucas, former leader of the Green Party, urging the Greens not to field a candidate, because she would rather have Andy Burnham as the Prime Minister rather than another Reform MP. She sees it as a binary choice. I see it as a binary choice. Obviously, we're on completely opposite ends of the political spectrum. But I think we both see it for what it is, which is literally a referendum on, or a decision that the people of Makerfield have to make for the country. Do you want Burnham as PM or not?
Well, that is a brilliant question, and it ties in with the main question of today's show. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Is Starmer the devil we know? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. I think we've got a cheeky voice note. Let's take a listen.
Morning, Mark and the breakfast team. Travelling Boz here. Yeah, I've just seen that short video on Andy Burnham strolling down the road there, blaming Thatcher and what she'd done to the community. That was over 35 years ago, and he's still going back to that. What he needs to do is work out what Labour have done in the last, 22 months.
Well, that is brilliant. And Boz, thank you for that. There's a lot of, reaction to our conversation about Margaret Thatcher. Burnham is blaming Margaret Thatcher for the state of the Northwest in 2026, even though we had, 11, 12 years of Blair and Brown. But this from Rich in Dudley. Good morning, Mark, and hello, Charlie. Regarding Margaret Thatcher, my father voted Labour all his life, even during the Thatcher years. But, and here's the but, he bought our council house because of the policy that she brought in. 25 years ago, he died, and after selling the house, I started a business with the money, which enabled me to have a good standard of living. Rich in Dudley. Rich, thank you for that, and congratulations on everything you've achieved. Some of it enabled by the Iron Lady. How fascinating. Damon in Wigan says, why doesn't Andy Burnham just blame Tony Blair? Because he's the one that has made this country what it is today. Now, what we've done, folks, on Talk Breakfast, we've unearthed a shocking video of Andy Burnham in 2022, demonstrating that he might, if he becomes Prime Minister, be the most woke Prime Minister in the history of this country. The clip is outrageous. That's next, 6:51, Talk Breakfast.
not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, 6:54. Happy Wednesday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for Jezza. The big man is back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Joanna in Salisbury. Oh, my goodness, Mark. Has it come to this? Which of my hands do I want to cut off? Death of 1,000 cuts. Burnham forgets that Mrs Thatcher left, but 13 years of Labour continued and did not improve the North. Paul has said, good morning, Mark. The so-called King of the North should ask the people there, how many of you bought your council houses? Dave in Aberdeen, good morning, Mark. I'm sorry, but Starmer and Burnham are two cheeks of the same backside. Thank you for that. Very elegantly put. Well, Andy Burnham, speaking in 2022, I should say, demonstrated some very, very woke opinions about biological sex and trans rights. Take a listen.
Clearly, there is a group of people who do feel that toilets should be safe space only for women. And there shouldn't be anyone who was biologically a male shouldn't be allowed in that space. Now, I personally think that's a majority view. I think it's a minority view, quite a small minority view actually. And I don't want to see clash, as I have seen in the last year, clashes between people standing up for trans rights and people supposedly standing up for women's rights. So don't start culture wars in Greater Manchester where people are falsely kind of portraying their gender in a different way just because they want to, abuse a women's space or encroach on women's safety. Maybe it happens, but you're talking a tiny number of people.
Yeah, isn't it? Is it so fantastic for a middle-aged man to pronounce on how how safe women feel in their own space, such as a bathroom? Yeah. I mean, this guy calls himself progressive, really empathetic, one of the good guys, #be kind, lecturing women on what safety looks like.
And clearly was uncomfortable there. He didn't quite know what he probably thought because you can just see the
trying to say the right thing.
Trying to say the right thing to appease the right campaign.
Is that not Starmer 2.0? This guy is just Starmer with a better hairdo.
Yep.
A woman is a woman who's got ovaries. This is exactly the same triangulation that we're seeing here.
Exactly, and I think that's why Piers Morgan, funny enough, has been brilliant at holding these politicians to account. The last one was Zach Polanski asking him, can a woman have a penis? And if you can't answer that question, openly, honestly, accurately, and you sort of dancing around the topic or not understanding the topic enough, then you get into trouble. And I think, look, that clip will not go down well.
I also don't think it's a tiny minority of women that consider it wrong for a biological male to enter female spaces. Female spaces exist for a reason, don't they? And have been hard fought for by women through history.
Yep.
They're there for a reason, and Burnham quite happy to discard that.
Absolutely, and you can have, as you should have, a situation where everybody feels as though they can be protected. I mean, he talked there in that clip about, people appearing to be trans to go on and attack women, which he thought didn't happen or was a small minority of people. Well, just look at the cases that there was in Scotland. Somebody identified as trans. Isla Bryce.
She's lovely. She's so sweet. I've been out for a drink with her. She's
but there was,
I bought her a bra and everything. We went up west and we splashed the cash over at Selfridges.
But it was the case of, someone appearing or claiming to be trans, then was sent to a woman's prison having attacked a woman. That is not acceptable. That is just bonkers. So you can have the situation should be, as is, most people would think, I support trans people.
Me too.
I have absolutely, no doubt that they've entered into what must be the most awful of adolescent sort of life, because struggling to know who they are, believing to be
it's a tough transition, and probably similar to what it might have been like to become gay in the 50s or 60s.
Totally. And so I want those people but being trans doesn't define who you are. It's still what you can give to your community, how you can live your life in the best possible way, and I would support people doing that no end. But it's just very obvious that if you are born male or born a particular biological sex, if you want to change that in a particular way, then there are other ways in which we can support you doing that. But if you're biologically male, walking into a female-only space is just not the way to do it.
No, most definitely. I think it was a mistake going for a drink with Isla Bryson, by the way.
Well,
because as the day rolled, I said, "Love, you got 5 o'clock shadow." But listen, you're just pleased to see me. No, the truth is that if we didn't laugh, we'd cry.
We'd cry, exactly.
Charlie, I mean, so brilliant to have you in the studio. Congratulations on Arsenal's victory. I say that through gritted teeth. And good luck in the Champions League final. And of course, you'll be back same time next week with Jezza?
Yes, I hope so.
Brilliant
very much
stuff.
So.
Always unmissable. The brilliant Charlie Rowley, thank you for your time. Former Conservative Special Advisor and Speaker of Common Sense. But the ultimate common sense comes from you. And our question this morning is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Who should run your country? Is Starmer the devil we know? Is he the lesser of two evils? A very big hour to come. Ian Duncan Smith is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, 3 minutes past 7. A happy Wednesday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Jez is back tomorrow. A big show for you this morning. And breaking news, UK inflation has eased from 3.3% in March to 2.8% last month. That's very good news, but I'm so confused because Rachel from Accounts, the Chancellor, said the Iran war was causing inflation to go up. Well, it's headed downwards. Potentially a stay of execution because the inflationary pressures on our economy remain significant, not just what's happening in the Middle East, but of course the self-inflicted policies of this government. But inflation down to 2.8%. It is good news. We welcome it. And Andy Burnham blasts the Iron Lady as he says he will reverse Thatcher's legacy. So is Britain about to go full socialist if he gets into number 10? Meanwhile, the bad headlines just keep coming for the King of the North as questions emerge about his handling of the grooming gangs scandal and his ultra-woke position on the definition of a woman. Also this morning, HS2 tops £100 billion. We've got the inside story on this national scandal and alleged rapes on Channel 4's flagship entertainment show. So has reality TV gone too far? And our question to you this morning is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Which would be the lesser of two evils? Is Starmer the devil we know? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. That may well be the choice facing the country. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222, leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. You can hear us on the radio, DAB Plus in app and online. Lovely to have your company. And you can watch the show. Head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Let's take a voice note on Burnham versus Starmer. And this is Baz.
Why is Andy Burnham King of the North? What's he ever done for Northumberland, Middlesbrough, Hull, where I'm from? Does the North just stop at Manchester? Great show, Baz.
Baz, thank you. Succinct and powerful. Well, Andy Burnham has launched his campaign in this by-election of Makerfield. And take a listen to his campaign video in which he targets the legacy of Margaret Thatcher.
It was growing up in and around these streets that I saw what Thatcher's government did to places like this, the deindustrialisation, the draining away of economic, social and political power. It left places like Makerfield behind, and Britain has been on that path for the last 40 years, and it was the sense of injustice I got about the way this country is run that took me towards politics.
What all of these experiences have taught me is that Westminster doesn't work for people in this part of the world and communities like this across the UK.
Full disclosure, I consider Andy Burnham to be a preening narcissist and a charlatan. That's my view. Others will disagree. He's a very popular mayor in Greater Manchester. He's been credited with growing the economy, and he may well win this by-election based upon the support he has in that region. Personally, I'm not a fan. But it's interesting that he targets Margaret Thatcher, who I would argue transformed the fortunes of this country. We were the sick man of Europe. By 87, an economic powerhouse with growth of 5.4%. You'd bite your hand off for that now, wouldn't you? And it's very interesting because in 2001, Margaret Thatcher endorsed Ian Duncan Smith for the leadership of the Conservative Party, and he joins us now. Good morning, Sir Ian.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, I think that he's picked the wrong fight here, Andy Burnham, in Margaret Thatcher, because I think that her legacy is a proud one.
No, I agree. I think Margaret Thatcher did turn the fortunes around. After all, I'm old enough to remember when it was a massive depression hanging over the United Kingdom. We were seen as the sick man in Europe. We had more strikes per year than any other nation across Europe, or for that matter in the developed world. We had huge amounts of money flowing into industries that were badly run, taken over by the state, and deeply uncompetitive, incapable of doing any of that work. All of that she turned around. She gave belief back into Britain again, and that was a huge point. Now, of course, you know, when you have to take big decisions like she took, tough decisions, you divide opinion, no question at all. That's what politics is about. But what politics is about forging your own agenda and making sure you know where you're going and how to do it. And Thatcher taught us that was the case. And by the way, a little reminder for Andy Burnham, we had 3 election victories for Labour after Margaret Thatcher, with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown running the British economy, arguably longer in a way in power than she was. And if he wants to criticize anybody, he should have a look at what they did to unravel so much of what Margaret Thatcher did in those days. And what we're dealing with today is the mess that the Labour government at that stage left and created huge problems thereafter. And that is where your problem. So pick your target. And what is going on here about attacking Margaret Thatcher, it's classic, a little bit of red meat to his Labour colleagues in the House of Commons to say, I'm coming in and we're going back to the good old days of state nationalisation, run by the state, everything to do with the state, all the water companies coming in. Everyone say, well, that's great. This generation has not experienced socialism, full bore and total socialism, which I'm afraid my generation did, which is why we elected Margaret Thatcher. It doesn't work. What it does instead is it makes sure that taxpayers pick up the bill for every failed intervention by government. That is what he is promising. And I have to say, it's just political nonsense.
So you would say that that actually Andy Burnham, he's got it completely wrong on Thatcher. That's your unequivocal position.
Yeah. What you need to go back and have a look at what she had to do at the time. We were bankrupt. The IMF had already stepped in to give us a loan, for God's sake. You know, one of the largest economies in the world had to get a loan because there was a run on the pound going on because we had failed to run it under Harold Wilson, Jim Callaghan. It was a spiral down, and the view was in Britain that we were just managing decay. That's all we could do. We couldn't challenge these economic factors.
And the coal industry, for example, was hemorrhaging millions of pounds a week. We were literally paying people to dig coal that was of no use.
Yes, and we couldn't compete with any other countries around the world because their coal was cheaper. You know, base economics, I'm afraid, do not recount that as a failed period. The failed period was followed when, I'm afraid, the Labour government then tried bit by bit to unravel most of what Mrs. Thatcher did. So if we really want to have a look at the mistakes, it's trying to say one thing and do another, which happened under, I'm afraid, Blair and Brown. And they unravelled a huge amount of what was going on under Margaret Thatcher's days. Yes, these were tough decisions. Tough because, you know, if they hadn't taken the decisions, the UK would basically have collapsed into mires of, you know, tons and tons of debt. And that's the problem that she had to solve. It wasn't an easy choice, not difficult. Then she had a war in which Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands. She had the courage and toughness to stand up to that. All of that meant leadership. What we're lacking right now is leadership. We've got a man in Downing Street who literally has no idea about leadership, spends his time consulting his colleagues, trying to persuade them that he's a good man. He turns in every direction possible. Within a minute, he can change his direction. And the government itself is responsible now for the chaotic, bad economy that we have, because, as you see, they're going to impose price checks, price caps, they mean, on the private enterprise. And why? Because they say that the cost of living is too high. Well, the problem when you do that is, first of all, you will force prices up elsewhere. Secondly, they're now wanting Russian oil to be brought back in after having sanctioned it, quite rightly, for the invasion of Ukraine. Now we're going to be taking Russian oil. The big question looms: how much more damage can this government do to Britain? Why in hell's name haven't we been digging our own oil up in the North Sea? Why do we have to go back and support Putin now, an absolute bastard who's been murdering people, bombing people in Ukraine in his ambition to take over that country? He's now having a wonderful time with President Xi, two of the worst dictators in history, murdering more people, slave labor, you name it. This is what's going on right in our faces. And in the middle of that, we crawl on bended knee to Russia to get oil off these people when we've got oil all over this country. Oil in the North Sea, oil under our feet through shale gas. And this government has no courage to dig that. And welfare spending going through the roof. And this is a government that hasn't the courage to defy their own backbenchers and to make the changes necessary to reduce that cost. The poor British public who are paying their taxes look at Starmer, and then they look at Burnham, and the answer is they look exactly the same.
Is one the lesser of two evils in your view, Sir Ian?
No, because it all comes down to what your beliefs are. I was looking at it. I must say, I've known Andy Burnham for ages, and I got on all right with him. I played football with him. It's not a personal matter. But I don't know what he's up to with this latest attack on Margaret Thatcher. It's just nonsense. You can't blame people so many decades away from you for the chaos that has been caused by Labour.
This is cheap. It's cheap politics, isn't it, Sir Ian?
Well, it's stupid politics. I mean, who raised national insurance on part-time workers? Labour. Who's raised national insurance overall on businesses who now they can't employ people? Labour. Who's seeing the Labour rate, the unemployment rate, rise under their watch? Under their watch, Labour. Who's been the stupid people that have wandered down the road and increased taxes on businesses and on individuals? Labour. Who's the one that will not mine oil in the North Sea, drill for it, and therefore having huge extra costs by importing oil from all over the world with extra charges on shipping and on the cost and price of purchasing it? Labour. These are decisions made by this Labour government. And now Burnham is basically accessing the fact that he's going to be very much the same.
And of course, if we look at the legacy of various administrations up to this point, we can definitely look at the Blair years, can't we, Sir Ian? Because it was Tony Blair who opened the border to the east of Europe, going far above and beyond what his requirements were as an EU member state. I think because he wanted to flirt with Brussels, maybe get a big job after being Prime Minister, perhaps President of Europe, that sort of thing. But anyway, he opened the border to the east. What did that achieve in communities like Makerfield? Downward pressure on wages and integration issues within those communities.
Yeah, no, I made a speech about this during the Brexit debate. And I was the one that said to everybody, what happens is the economists will tell you that GDP grows when you have more people coming into the country. That is correct, because you have more people coming in, more people therefore theoretically earning. However, what they never tell you is that GDP per capita falls. What we witnessed in those years was an essential collapse in the earning power of British citizens. And they were competing with people who were hotbedding and who were able, therefore, to accept much lower salaries because they had no housing costs, no family costs over here, and they were basically being employed over British. I mean, I remember many times going around job centres, talking to well-educated tradesmen, people who are plumbers, who said, during the Olympics, the 2012 Olympic thing, when we had the Olympics over here, that when they were building the stadium and all the other facilities, they couldn't get jobs because they couldn't bid for the jobs because the salary levels were so low they couldn't afford to run their houses and their families because cheaper labour was coming in. And the reality of all of that was the hangover from when Blair's huge ability to bring in plenty of people from Eastern Europe. That started the rot. But it's GDP per capita. It's the amount of money that they lowered for those who were working in the UK. That was the problem, and nobody ever wanted to talk about that.
Just striking a note of balance, Sir Ian, do you think that Mrs Thatcher's administration neglected those post-industrial communities?
She had to make some changes. We were subsidising more and more industries. The taxpayer was picking it up. It meant that businesses were picking up the costs, and this country simply wasn't able to compete anymore because the costs on businesses were so high that we had basically fallen down the rank of many other countries. If I was to level any criticism at all, I think that what we should have done with all of that, and we invested a lot of money into those areas, but we should have made it very clear that there were plenty of other investments that could be brought into the UK and brought into those areas. The key bit in all of this was to try and make the changeover as smooth as possible. The problem was that the depth of our problems previous to that was so great. After all, you had people like Tony Benn, who were busy picking winners by using government money to invest in businesses they thought would do okay. The one thing we were taught was politicians are the worst people in the world to understand which business is going to be more successful. The base problem that we faced then, and we face now, is that the cost of doing business is so high that businesses abroad can do it cheaper. And that is our problem. One thing I will say, though, is I've argued for some time, is that what we should be doing is bringing back manufacturing industry into the United Kingdom, because the labour-intensive nature of manufacturing has gone. It's now mostly computer-based, machine-based, and there's no way on earth why we can't now bring that back to the UK. We should get our energy costs down by drilling for oil, and we could make the UK again a manufacturing base, particularly in defence, but also in wider areas. I mean, the cost of the green agenda on the car manufacturing industry is terrible. We won't have a car manufacturing industry under this government in about 10 or 15 years. They're already leaving. The Japanese are leaving. Why? Because the base cost, because of all these ridiculous ideological requirements that they must manufacture electric cars, no matter whether or not there's a market for them. That's killing the base for our manufacturing industry and putting huge costs on them. So if we want to do anything at all to protect manufacturing this day, instead of not harkening back to the past, it's make sure you cut the cost on them, get rid of this net zero obligation, and let them thrive by selling cars that people actually want to buy.
Absolutely right. And the same thing is happening to the car industry in Germany. Sir Ian, we know you're on a tight schedule. Finally, can we talk about Mrs. Thatcher's legacy and whether she was our last great Prime Minister? Has it been a gradual decline since 1990 for the country, do you think?
Well, I think the problem that's happened over the years is that more and more it's become difficult for people to govern. You know, the advent of social media and all the other modern technologies that have arrived have made it very difficult to make decisions at Westminster and decisions that last. And what this government is facing is what faced, in many senses, the last government, which is that politicians on either side seem to have very little sustainability. They have very little attention span lasting longer than a few weeks, and getting through problems is difficult for them, so they start voting against all sorts of problems that exist and not wanting to be able to support the government. So this government is riven already within the first year by rebellions on the base areas that they have to deal with, such as welfare reform. You've seen that already yourself, but a government that now is scared of its own backbenchers. So that problem has got worse and worse. I mean, the number of prime ministers we've had is astonishing, really, whether you like a party or not. We're witnessing this psychodrama going on in Labour. We had the same in the Conservative Party. What's actually happening is now there's a lack of tolerance within politics, I think, for governments trying to make tough decisions.
Do we expect too much of politicians, do you think, Sir Ian?
Well, I think far too much power is vested still in Westminster. Therefore, expectations that they can wave a magic wand and solve all problems are simply not the case. You know, if there's anything that we were taught, Margaret Thatcher, was actually government can do very little except try and prepare the way for others in business to make the big decisions, to invest in here. That's a decision made by companies on base returns and whether or not they can make money. If you run against that, as she said, if you buck the markets, then governments fall. And she's right about that. We saw it previously. We saw it with Liz Truss. You've just got to make sure that what you do is to try and make the UK as competitive as possible, as open as possible to investment. We were, for a period, the one country that the US wanted to invest in here. They invested in the UK more than any other country in the world, and we invested in the US more than any other country in the world, including China. But the biggest problem we face, Mark, today is within all of that decline, what we also now face is the biggest threat we've had to our sovereignty and to our freedoms that we've had at any time since the 1930s. I've been campaigning on this for some time. Nobody really wants to listen. It's the rise of China. You saw it the other day, dominant. Their support of Russia, Russia's brutal war in Ukraine, their support of Iran, who are wanting a nuclear weapon and who want to dominate. And by the way, many of the deaths and murders that we've seen and attacks on Jews and others here is being fostered by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're all over the UK. We simply don't seem to want to take action against them. This government has failed on that. All of this, you've got North Korea in the middle of all this. We now have North Korea's missiles able to strike London at any time they want. We have got no defense against that, not one bit. You know, that is the key question. And what we're seeing in the development of China's military, they now build more naval ships in one shipyard than the United States builds in a whole year. They are going to have larger naval fleets, bigger armies, more missiles. And if you want to be dominated by a totalitarian state who executes more people in a year than the rest of the world, that uses forced organ harvesting, uses slave labor in the production of products, then this is happening to us right now. We aren't facing up to it. We did in the 1930s, finally, but we haven't done here. This government is weak, and it is the British people that will pay the price for that, both in money and, I'm afraid, in the loss of our freedoms.
Well, Sir Ian, your political legacy is a strong one too. Right on the economy, right on universal credit as the architect of that important change, and now right on China. And you are so consistent on the colossal existential threat of this powerful, dangerous and wicked regime. And we will continue the conversation. Sir Ian, thank you so much for your valuable time this morning. My thanks to Sir Ian Duncan Smith, former leader of the Conservative Party. So lots more to come. Here's a quick voice note. Burnham or Starmer? Which of these two men is the lesser of two evils?
Morning, Mark. It's Dan from Kent. Burnham or Starmer? Well, we know what Starmer brings to the table. Not a lot. But with Burnham, it's going to be a Miliband chancellor. Can the country actually survive that? And what did Thatcher say? The problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. It's a no-brainer. Stay, Starmer, we need you.
Thank you for that, Dan. A shocking Labour cover-up, 7:24. This is Talk Breakfast. More to come.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. It is 6. No, can we just correct that? Because when you are the host of a breakfast show, you must get the time check right. Otherwise, you absolutely terrify folk. It is 28 minutes past 7. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Gary says, Mark, if that's the choice, we are doomed. In my 60 years, we've never had a government so bad. It is time to emigrate. Gary, I've got to say, so many viewers and listeners to the show have told me that if they could afford to leave this country, they would be gone. Good morning, Mark. On Burnham and Margaret Thatcher, Andy says, will Burnham also reverse Thatcher's closure of coal mines? and start burning coal again to generate electricity and create virgin steel. Great show. What a good point. You're absolutely right about that. What about this from Sue in Dorset? Good morning, Sue. I hope you're enjoying the show. Sue says, Andy Burnham has a cheek blaming Maggie Thatcher. Tony Blair was in for 10 years after her. He needs to be looking closer to home. This government doesn't have a clue. It's all too easy to blame others. Glyn in County Durham. Why is this man called the King of the North? The last time I looked, Manchester is in the Midlands. Great show, Glyn. Thank you for that. Keep the opinions coming. Now, ministers have been accused of a cover-up over the Peter Mandelson vetting scandal. So the plot thickens. Could this be more bad headlines for the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer? Let's get the views of the man that exposed this story by revealing in September of last year that Mandelson had failed security vetting. It's the political editor of The Independent, David Maddox. Good morning, David.
Morning, Mark.
Really good to have you on the show. What's the story here, David?
Well, the House of Commons voted some time ago for, in a thing called the humble address, for the Mandelson papers, vis-a-vis papers around the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US, to all be published. The government kind of tried to block it, but then backed off because of a rebellion, but agreed that some of the papers would be looked at by a committee, the Intelligence and Security Committee, to check that they didn't, breach any of British security and so forth. They've published some of the papers, but the vast majority of them, this big tranche of embarrassing material, which could bring down Keir Starmer, has gone unpublished. We were expecting it actually tomorrow. And now we find out that it's not going to be published until June the 1st at the earliest. And the government's trying to suggest that we're going to wait for this by-election in Makerfield to be over before we get sight nor sound of them.
Well, it's a fascinating story, isn't it? I mean, could this Mandelson scandal, could it still do for Starmer?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a great deal of suspicion around what's not being published. And it's quite clear that Keir Starmer's on the precipice. He's just waiting for somebody to finally push him over the edge. And, Labour are happy to wait to see if Andy Burnham can get back. Not a given, by the way, in Makerfield. I mean, it's going to be a tough battle there in that by-election. But, it's after those election results, after almost 100 of his MPs publicly saying he needs to go, after all the other Mandelson revelations and scandals, his position is so tenuous now that anything could do for him, and certainly these papers potentially could be it.
So therefore, David, reading between the lines, you're suggesting that even if Andy Burnham does not prevail in Makerfield, it's still bad news for Starmer. He's still probably on his way out of number 10, in your view?
I have no doubt. I mean, I've spoken to Labour MPs. They admit they're waiting for Burnham. They can't do much before they know the result of that by-election. But the mood is that if it's not Burnham, then they're going to go for somebody else, and Starmer has to go. My guess is that it'll end up being a choice between Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner if Andy Burnham doesn't come into Parliament.
Well, that is fascinating. And what is your overview at the early stages of this by-election contest? We've had the campaign video released by Andy Burnham criticising the legacy of Thatcher. What do you make of that move? Is that a masterstroke, given the fact that she's not exactly popular in that area?
Yeah, I think it's kind of playing to the core vote there. It's playing to some of the old kind of resentments. And it's true that Margaret Thatcher was much more popular in the south of England and East Anglia and places like that than she was in the north of England because of deindustrialisation. But I do wonder if he's kind of overplaying that card at this point. I mean, his position on Europe and wanting to rejoin may now be a bigger problem for him, because Brexit is a much fresher debate, and that was a very pro-Leave seat. I mean, it's interesting that Reform have unveiled their plumber. I mean, we had Hanover Plumber went for the Greens down the road there in Gorton and Denton. Now we've got Robert the plumber who stood there before and did very well. I see that there's kind of the inevitable far-right allegations and connections have been chucked at this chap, but you know, in many ways, he looks like the perfect candidate. Local, wants to represent his area, not just use it to become prime minister. Former army, former NHS, you know, does a proper job. So let's see. I think it's game on in Makerfield.
Would you say, David, it's too close to call? Do you think that one candidate edges it over the other at this stage?
I think, I mean, from everything I hear, and I haven't visited yet, but from everything I hear, Andy Burnham probably edges it. But, you know, talking to Labour MPs who have been up there already, they're saying it's 50-50. They admit that if Andy wasn't standing, there is no chance they would win that constituency in the current circumstances. He's what gives them the edge. And it's because of, you know, he's a good politician. He's got personality. He's very well known. He's a bit of a celebrity status. Whether that's enough though to overcome some of the other issues, we will see. I mean, voters don't like to be told what to do, and there is a kind of feeling here that they're being told they've got to vote for this guy so we can sort out the government.
David, we always love having you on the show, one of the best connected journalists in the country. David Maddox, political editor of The Independent, the man that exposed the Mandelson scandal, that revealed in September that Mandelson had failed security vetting. David reached out to Number 10, and yet months later, Starmer claimed he knew nothing. Well, David Maddox there saying that whatever happens, Starmer is toast. Well, our question this morning is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Is Starmer the devil we know? Lots to get through. 7:36. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:38, this is Talk Breakfast. Who is worse, Starmer or Burnham? Well, Dan says, good morning, Mark. Andy Burnham will be like a Callaghan figure, and we will need a Thatcher to save the country. Who would that be, I wonder? Chris in Northumberland, good morning, Mark. Burnham going back to Thatcher is silly. He should be focusing on Benjamin Disraeli's One Nation policies from 1874. Andy is a dusty old Labour hack that needs to hang up his T-shirt. Hi, Mark. Burnham and the Reform candidate have clearly stated their aims. The people of Makerfield now have a decision. Do you want to save the Labour Party or do you want to save the country? What a great slogan that is. David, I wonder whether Nigel Farage is listening. He might nick that off you. Stephen Sheffield, good morning, Mark. The Reform candidate is a plumber. Perfect fit as we're all in the toilet with the economy going down the drain. Steve, what a brilliant text. Keep those coming. Well, I'm delighted to say that Peter Kaine is the owner of Kaine Butchers, a very popular and successful business in Makersfield, who met Andy Burnham yesterday. Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
Lovely to have you on the show. First of all, tell me about your business.
We've been very lucky. We're the last ones in Ashton. There was 10 butchers years ago, and we've been quite lucky, and we've got a good customer base.
That is so brilliant. Which are the meats? Which are the cuts that sell best, Peter?
It depends. Through the week, it'll be chicken fillets and your mince and your stew, and then at weekends it's more your steaks, your fillet steak, your sirloin steak, and then obviously weekend joints. And actually, you are very sort of aware of what's happening in the economy because the pressures on your business, the national insurance tax rate, the red tape, some of the changes to the minimum wage, all that affects you, but also you see it with your customers, don't you? You probably see the economy based upon how much they can afford to buy. Yeah, it's everything just seems to be going up and up to run a business, and it's getting harder and harder. I've seen a lot of small businesses go in the area, but obviously we've got good customers and we're quite lucky. And tell me, Peter, about your encounter with Andy Burnham. How did it go? He came in yesterday. He's a lovely, lovely bloke, honestly. He seems down to earth. He's got no airs and graces about him. I hope he becomes, the MP for the Makerfield area. What was it about him? I mean, obviously, very personable guy, but what else was it about him that persuaded you that he gets your vote, Peter? He just seemed to be very, very down to earth. He came across very friendly. We could look you in the face. He wasn't, he was no airs and grace about him. He was a nice man. I was very impressed with him. And Peter, are you able to tell me whether you're a floating voter or are you a Labour supporter generally? What's your affiliation? Traditionally, I don't come from a Labour background, but some of his policies and some of the things he wants to take on what Margaret Thatcher did, I do agree with because we need more social housing. I think he needs to take on the energy. I pay £1,000 a month just to little butcher's shop in electricity. Crazy. It's crazy. And other businesses are probably paying even more. And Margaret Thatcher, she's not a popular figure in that area, is she? I think a lot of mistakes were made in the 80s. We've seen industries go. I think we should just concentrate on making Britain proud again. Yeah, most definitely. Now, Peter, fair enough that you were impressed by Andy Burnham, and I'm told by a lot of people that he's a very, very charming guy, and as you said, very down to earth. What about the Labour Party, the Labour government? I mean, do you resent the current Prime Minister for how hard it's become for you to run a business? I think probably what's happened in the country, we've had 20 years where we've had the Tories where they've been too far right, and now we've got the Labour Party what's too far left. We need something what's in the middle, just for the middleman, and to progress from there. And Peter, did Andy Burnham talk to you about how his policies would help your business? I think we just got to get him in the MP first, because I think a lot of the questions we're all asking is he can't do anything until he's actually MP of Ashton, and then obviously if he becomes the MP, then obviously we can address these issues with certain and just move on with these obviously questions. Yeah, and you were impressed by Andy. What do you think of the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Peter? What's your view of him? I think his personally is letting the country down. We seem to lost, like I said, the middle people vote, and obviously that's why a lot of people have voted reform. But I think it's a vote of people are just had enough, not a vote what they're thinking what the vote could do. Yeah, and the Reform candidate Robert Kenyon, he's not been round yet for a Silverside or a bit of rump. No, he's not been round yet. There's a lot of people knocking on the doors in the Makerfield area. It's a big area, but no, I've seen what the Reform fella is. He's like I say, he's a local lad. He's a plumber, so he's probably an hard-working lad.
But he's probably not going to turn your head, I wouldn't have thought.
He's got no, because he's not been into politics. I think Andy Burnham has been the Health Secretary, he's been the Lord Mayor of Manchester. He's got form, and I think this is what you got to vote on. I think the people of Ashton have got to forget what politics you're in, but we need somebody what can run the area.
Peter, do you think Andy will probably win this by-election? What's your view? You know the community
honestly,
well.
They're up for a tough one.
Hard to say.
It's hard to say. Personally, I'd like him to, but he's got a lot to take on.
And Peter, you'd obviously like him to be PM as well. Is there not a concern that he might be elected in this seat and then never mentions Makerfield again?
Well, he's got to keep the Makerfield people happy, or if he doesn't keep his seat, he can't be in the House of Commons.
It's true.
I think he will. He's a local lad. We spoke about issues yesterday. I think he'd be good. I think he'd be good for the country.
Peter, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, meeting you.
Well, you too, and congratulations on your business. It's a really tough time, as you've mentioned, for businesses at the moment, all the costs, the inflation, everything. So more power to you, Peter, and clearly you've got an army of very happy customers.
Yeah, the Makerfield people are the kind, they've always backed me up, which is, I can't thank them enough.
Well, that's so good. And Peter, if I'm in the area, I shall purchase my own body weight in ribeye. Because I'm not a vegan, Peter.
No, vegan. Oh, God, that's good to hear.
I'll have a few sausages. You too. You take care. What a brilliant conversation. Thank you, Peter Kaine. There you go. Kaine Butchers. They were visited by Andy Burnham, who's very impressed. Andy's in Rochdale. Morning, Andy.
Yes, definitely not a fan of Thatcher. I think she was the architect of the destruction of Britain. I'm sure many of your listeners will think, what? But they seem to forget she sold all her assets off. And if you look at the problems we've got today with energy, now I know the big levies on the energy prices, she sold off her gas, the electric, telecommunications, public transport, BP. Some might argue she didn't sell BP off. She sold all her assets off. Where has all that money gone? We was awash with money because she'd sold everything off. In 1979, she abolished the 15% import tariff, the same tariff that Donald Trump is imported now around the world. She abolished our tariffs. All our manufacturing base got exported. Germany was the powerhouse of Europe because we were a strong manufacturing base. Lost much of our manufacturing base. She smashed this country. She sold our housing stock off. Now we've got a housing crisis. House houses were never intended to be sold as private houses. They were there for cheap, affordable housing for those who did not wish to buy a house. She was just destructive.
Well, Andy, that's fascinating that you've had to say that, and therefore the remarks of Andy Burnham will resonate for many, particularly perhaps in the Northwest.
Well, it seems a decent enough chap, and unfortunately I don't vote there, but if I could vote for anybody, I'd vote for Rupert Law's Restore Britain Party. But Andy, he said some contentious things, obviously. Maybe I'd like you to get him on your show and let's hear from him. It's easy to put words.
Yeah.
It would be good if we could hear from him what his actual views are. I mean, you're coming out of absurdities that women have a peen as well. You've got to be much.
Andy, you're too right. Can I tell you, Andy, you've got a pair of balls, though. And I'm very grateful for your thoughts on Margaret Thatcher's legacy, which, in your view, is a distinctly negative one. We're going to have that conversation this morning, Thatcher's legacy. And what about Burnham versus Starmer? Is Starmer the lesser of two evils? 7:47, this is Talk Breakfast.
not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Go.
I'm loyal.
Don't tell me. Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
$7:50 Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. Brian says, good morning, Mark. Regarding the Mandelson papers not being released until after the by-election in Makerfield, this stinks of a cover-up because they know what's in those papers will implicate Labour MPs and officials and potentially the Prime Minister. Now, we're going to get to more of your thoughts on Burnham versus Starmer for number 10. But first, we're hearing reports of a Jewish man, and I quote, kicked like an animal in a Golders Green attack in North London. Police are investigating an attack on a young Jewish man who was visiting London from Israel, who says he was kicked and beaten by a group of men. The 22-year-old, who does not want to be fully identified, suffered injuries to his face, neck and back in the assault in the Grove, Golders Green, in the early hours of Monday. Let's get reaction now from David Mensah, who is a government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister in Israel. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Mark.
So your reaction to this alleged attack, it's absolutely shocking and unfortunately seems to be part of a wider pattern.
Well, my Prime Minister Netanyahu, has warned Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He has warned him about the rise of anti-Semitism, which is not being taken seriously enough on the streets of the UK. In fact, he wrote him a letter on the 14th of August. And if I may, I'll quote from it.
Please do.
This is almost a year ago now. Prime Minister Netanyahu says to Keir Starmer that he's very concerned about the alarming rise of anti-Semitism in the UK and the lack of decisive action by the government of the UK to confront it. In the letter, the Prime Minister Netanyahu says it is not diplomacy, it is appeasement to reward and to give silent support for the fundamentalists, for the jihadis, which we are fighting here in Israel, but you are also fighting in the UK. And he also says that Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government has emboldened those who menace British Jews and encourages the Jew hatred, now stalking the streets of the UK. The Prime Minister Netanyahu also says it spreads when leaders stay silent. That was almost a year ago that my Prime Minister sent this letter to your Prime Minister, and it seems that still very little is happening. They're coming for the Jewish people in the UK, but make no mistake, these jihadis which you have imported into the UK, after the Jews, they'll go for the women. After the women, they'll go for LGBT. After that, they'll go for the media, which unfortunately has fallen to sympathise for so much of these jihadists in the UK, not Talk TV, but others.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very real concern. Our Prime Minister has called for action from the UK, not just words.
And many British Jews have told me, David, they would feel safer in Tel Aviv than in London in 2026, which is damning.
Well, look, British Jews don't need me to tell them that this Israel is the sole Jewish state in the world, and it is the homeland of the Jewish people, together with everyone else that wants to live here in peace. They know that. They don't need to be reminded of that fact. But let me say this very, very clearly. The UK will lose its Jewish community. That gives so much to every aspect of British
culturally,
society.
Economically, societal, everything.
In every single sense. They will lose their Jewish community if this is not taken more seriously. And this silent emboldenment of jihadism is not brought down.
Can you tell me how the Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, feels on a personal level about the rise of anti-Semitism in the UK? Does it sadden him? Does it anger him? What are his emotions?
Well, of course it angers him. Of course it saddens him, which was why the Prime Minister wrote this letter to Keir Starmer, warning him of what was going on. But for my Prime Minister, he says this very, very clearly about Keir Starmer. Statements are no substitute for confronting the roots of anti-Semitism, which is festering across the UK. And, British Jews should not need security patrols and emergency volunteers to live openly as Jews. For the UK government, enough with the words. The UK must act decisively and urgently. Why is the Iranian ambassador still sitting comfortably in his residence in Kensington, a regime which has tried to assassinate President Trump more than once, that regime that killed, just in February, 40,000 of its own people? Why is that ambassador still in place? Why has it taken so long for the British government to ban the IRGC? They finally got their act together. But many countries have banned this terrorist organization many, many months before. Why is the Muslim Brotherhood still not outlawed in the UK? Unfortunately, Keir Starmer's government rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism, and unfortunately, it's the Jewish community in the UK which are its victims.
Well, of course, because the United Kingdom under Sir Keir Starmer has failed to support America and Israel in their efforts to disarm the most wicked regime since the Third Reich, which is the Iranian regime. And of course, it was Starmer who chose to recognise Palestine whilst Israel was still responding to October the 7th and seeking to neutralise Hamas. So it's not been exactly an honourable stint for this Prime Minister, has it, in relation to Israel and Jewish people?
It hasn't, Mark. You're absolutely correct, which is why the Prime Minister Netanyahu, chose such strong words in his letter to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He said this about other leaders in the world, but it's time for the British government to wake up.
Was there a strong response from Number 10? Do we know whether there was a response from
Lots of flowery language, Mark. I don't need to tell you about the sort of things which we got back. Lots of flowery languages and talk about, enhancing the police and the Jewish community, etc., etc. But, none of that is a substitute for the appeasement which this government is unfortunately giving to jihadis. We saw that plain as the nose on your face over the weekend, those two protests which happened in London. Keir Starmer chose to condemn just one and not the other, while the other was jam-packed full of support for jihadism.
And what do you make of the folk who are characterised as the sort of Hamas useful idiots, the progressive left who go on these weekly marches? What's your appraisal of them, and what does the Prime Minister of Israel think of those marches?
Well, if you support Hamas, if you shout the slogans which they shout weekly on the streets of London, we know what they are already. Intifada revolution from the river to the sea. That means you are supporting a genocidal terrorist organization. We as the Jewish people here in Israel, we recognize Jew hatred when we see it. And no one should be in any doubt whatsoever that when there are calls for Intifada revolution, it means kill the Jews. Now, for 3 years, the Prime Minister has been warning, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been warning about this phenomenon. It is coming to pass now. When the threat moves from words to physical violence, Jewish people have very little choice into their hands because the threat is physical. It's not about their feelings being hurt. The threat is physical. And if this carries on, this lack of action, this flowery language, but no real action, this increase in police patrols, but no real change in government policy, no real distancing itself from emboldening these jihadists, then, I fear for the future of the Jews of the UK.
And you're right about that, Dave.
Of course, thank you.
Huge implications. If British Jews are not safe, none of us are safe, because as you said, David, they start with the Jews and the rest will be next. My thanks to you for your valuable time, David Menzer, representing the Israeli government there. So much more to come. Talk breakfast. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning Talk Breakfast, Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle, who returns tomorrow. And breaking this morning, Andy Burnham blasts the Iron Lady as he says he will reverse Margaret Thatcher's legacy. So is Britain about to go full socialist if he gets into number 10? Meanwhile, the bad headlines just keep on coming for the King of the North as questions emerge about his handling of the grooming gangs scandal and his ultra-woke position on the definition of a woman. Meanwhile, the cost of HS2 tops £100 billion. We've got the inside story on this national scandal, plus alleged rapes on Channel 4's flagship entertainment show. Has reality TV gone too far? And our question to you this morning is a simple one. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Is Sir Keir the lesser of two evils? Is he the devil we know? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Tommy is taking your calls today. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222 and leave us a voice note. We love a voice note. We know you're busy getting the kids off to school, getting yourself ready for work. Perhaps you're at the tail end of a night shift, in which case we salute your contribution to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the great British economy. You can hear us on DAB Plus in app and online. You can see the show. Luke is directing our TV output this morning. Head to YouTube. Search Talking Up We Pop. Let's talk. Speaking of breaking news, we also have economic news, and it's good news. UK inflation has eased from 3.3% in March to 2.8% last month. It is fantastic news. Unfortunately, the direction of travel for inflation is going to be upward for the foreseeable, but there appears to be a stay of execution. And Christian, we can agree it is news that we will welcome. When there's good news, we will share it. Dan Hodges is the columnist at The Mail on Sunday, one of the finest journalists in the country. Good morning, Dan.
Morning.
Brilliant to have you on the show. What do you make of Andy Burnham's intervention regarding Margaret Thatcher? He's released a campaign video in his efforts to become the MP for Makerfield, and he said he will reverse the legacy of Thatcher. Is that the right fight to be picking?
Yes, it is in that seat. I mean, it's not necessarily a view I would share, but certainly Andy Burnham is reflecting what is, you know, the broad view of people in that constituency.
So it's an easy win. It's low-hanging fruit politically.
Yeah, I mean, people can have differing views about Margaret Thatcher and her legacy. I've got to be entirely honest. I'm quite an admirer of Margaret Thatcher. But that is not a view which is held, is widespread in the northwest of England. And Andy Burnham is you know, he's got a by-election to win, and he's accurately reflecting the views of the people he wants to be his constituents.
It's very early days, is it not, in the race for this seat? But what is the early mood music, would you say, Dan?
Well, I think the early mood music, I mean, this is my perspective. I was actually tweeting about this morning because I know we've had, you know, a lot of sort of sound and fury over the last 48 to 72 hours. I think Andy Burnham is well ahead, and we've got to wait and see. Obviously, we'll get polling and canvass returned, but it's certainly well ahead in terms of setting out his stall. It's been a huge debate about, you know, various historic policy positions on Brexit, obviously trans rights today, and it's absolutely right. Those positions are reported. But I don't think that those are going to cut through in this by-election. I think the key thing that Andy Burnham has successfully done at the very start of the campaign, obviously you were showing the clip of that campaign video, is he's managed to frame himself firstly as someone who is local to the area. Secondly, someone who, you know, is a part, if you like, from the traditional Westminster political consensus. And obviously he's got his joker, which is he represents change. You know, people are going to be told you vote for Andy Burnham on Thursday. On Friday, he's going to go down to London. He's going to kick Keir Starmer out of Downing Street, and that's, I think, going to be the clinching message.
Yes, your vote for Labour in this by-election will be consequential, and that's attractive to any local, isn't it?
Well, it's not just that it's consequential in that respect. I mean, obviously, we've just had, local elections across the country in which Labour were smashed, but they were primarily smashed by Nigel Farage and Reform, who obviously, went into areas such as Makerfield with one very clear message, which was vote for us to get rid of Keir Starmer. Now, as we've seen in this by-election, that is a message that is now working directly against Reform. That's Andy Burnham's message. Reform's message, it's not the message, but the reality is, and, Andy Burnham's team will be emphasising this, in this by-election, a vote for Reform is a vote for the status quo. So if you vote for Reform, you get one more Reform MP, but you get Keir Starmer squatting in Downing Street for the foreseeable future. And that's the problem that Reform have got. The message which they successfully deployed in the local elections and gave them such huge wins in the local elections is now actively working against them.
And over the last couple of years, Dan, you've been an artful and potent critic of Starmer's premiership. Do you think that Andy Burnham might be a slight improvement if he gets into number 10?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think Andy Pandy would be a slight improvement if he got into number 10. I mean, yes. I mean, now, obviously, it is not clear yet, and nobody can foresee what Andy Burnham's policy agenda. Obviously, he is going to have to set that out as once the formal campaign for the Labour leadership starts. And in that situation, I mean, he won't be the only. I'd be very surprised if he's the only candidate running. He's clearly the front runner, and then he'll set out his policy positions. But the reality is, and we saw it again yesterday with Keir Starmer having to continue the attempts to cover up the Mandelson papers. We don't have a government at the moment. Keir Starmer no longer is prime minister in name only. Obviously, no one has any interest now in what Keir Starmer's position is on anything, Keir Starmer's speeches, Keir Starmer's policy positions, Keir Starmer's policy agenda, because all people are interested in now is what are the positions and policy agenda of the people who it's self-evidently going to replace him in the next few weeks. So, but equally, that's been the position more or less since Keir Starmer came into Downing Street. Keir Starmer has not governed. I mean, he has not put forward an agenda, a programme. He hasn't just flip-flopped. I mean, he's not even flipped so he could flop. I mean, he just hasn't done anything, and there's been a vacuum where the country needed leadership. So on that basis alone, if Andy Burnham just comes into Downing Street and starts doing something and starts making decisions, that, by definition, will be an improvement on what we've currently got with Keir Starmer.
Although I just wonder whether political ambitions and economic reality will collide should Andy Burnham enter number 10, Dan. It's quite clear that if he wins this by-election and he's in the House of Commons, he'll likely win that leadership election with the support of left-wing backbenchers, the unions and the party membership, who are to the left, not just of most voters, but of most Labour voters. So he'll be swept to power on a left-wing agenda, at which point he gets in, and to paraphrase Liam Byrne, former Labour government minister, there's no money. So how do you square that circle?
I think that's a slight misunderstanding of what the current situation and mood is within the Labour Party. If you look at the polls, you look at the polling internally, you look at the polling amongst Labour members, Andy Burnham basically smashes any other Labour candidate, potential Labour candidate. And the reason for that is Andy Burnham, rightly or wrongly, enjoys support across the breadth of the Labour Party and the Labour movement and amongst backbench Labour MPs. Whoever becomes a replacement to Starmer is, I think, inevitably going to move the Labour Party incrementally to the left. because it's a left-wing party, its left flank is collapsing to the Greens, it's going to have to deal with that issue. But the reality is, what people in the Labour Party I speak to, what they see in Andy Burnham is he is the guy who could potentially save us from reform. He's the guy who is the antidote to Nigel Farage. That's how, we can already see it. That's how Andy Burnham is framing this by-election. I'm the person who can beat reform. I'm the person who can beat reform in the red wall. If he does that, then he's not simply going to have a mandate, nor are Labour MPs and members simply going to say to him, right, Andy, just march off to the left. That's why we elected you. They will want certain sort of, as I said, an incremental shift in certain areas, maybe on the economy in certain areas. But Andy Burnham, if he is elected, he's being elected, frankly, to deliver one job by Labour MPs, and that is be the guy who can neutralise Nigel Farage.
There will be disappointment, though, won't there, within the wider Labour movement if it's not a more radical, progressive agenda. And I don't know, Dan, how that is paid for.
Look, it's the Labour movement, so of course it's going to be disappointed. You know, the Labour movement's disappointed.
So I mean, in some ways,
everyone.
Dan, in some ways,
you know, I mean, Clement Attlee could rise from his grave and leave the Labour Party.
Yeah, but is it better? Is it just better packaged Starmerism?
That's the nature of the beast. The simple reality is, you know, we're all trying to gaze into our crystal balls and look about what will an Andy Burnham government be like, and the reality is we don't know. None of us know. The one thing we do know, though, is Andy Burnham will not be Keir Starmer. And I think my perception, and I think the perception of most people in the country is, for the moment, in the short term, that'll be enough. Let's get rid of Keir Starmer. Let's get somebody into Downing Street who can actually take some decisions. Then we can all step back and see if we've made a terrible, terrible mistake or not. But the one thing I think anybody who is looking objectively at the current political scene in the United Kingdom has to agree the status quo is not sustainable. We can't carry on with Keir Starmer squatting in Downing Street, I mean, saying, oh, I'm going to fight, when he's got absolutely nothing to fight with.
Most definitely. And Dan, I hear you loud and clear. If Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he will be immeasurably better at politics than Keir Starmer, and he will be a threat to reform, particularly in that red wall. Maybe Andy Burnham wins back the red wall. Anything is possible. But political skill only goes a certain distance, doesn't it? And we are on the edge of an economic crisis, and I just don't quite know how Prime Minister Andy Burnham is going to tackle that without cuts to public spending and without a country that lives within its means.
Look, I think you're broadly right. I think you're absolutely right. I think there are going to be some very hard decisions that this country has to take. But I think there are two things. Firstly, as I say, sorry to repeat myself, it needs somebody to actually take those decisions.
Yeah.
And as we can see, Keir Starmer is not a man who is capable of taking a decision. I don't think. I mean, look at what we got today. We've suddenly got, you know, you were just broadcasting. We're suddenly all waking up to the news that suddenly we're lifting sanctions on Russia. Yeah. Having been told by Keir Starmer, you know, it was his moral mission to defeat Putin and impose sanctions.
That's how desperate we are. We're lifting sanctions on Russia, and we're trying to freeze the price of milk, eggs, and bread. I mean, what a time to be alive.
Well, no. But again, yesterday we were getting the briefing. We're going to try and freeze prices on eggs and milk and bread, and this morning we're getting, oh no, that's wrong. The point is, it is impossible to know what the government under Keir Starmer is going to do, because it just cannot make up its mind. But on the broader point, the golden rule with politics is, if you do want someone who is going to have to take some quite hard decisions and tell the Labour Party some hard truths, that person is going to have to sit on the left of the Labour Party, because the Labour Party won't wear it from the right.
Right. Yeah. That's fascinating.
That is the political. Now, whether Andy Burnham is going to want to do that, but frankly, as you point out, he's going to have to do it. You know, you're absolutely right. The economic and social reality is what it is, and that's not going to change. As I say, whether Keir Starmer's Prime Minister, Andy Burnham's Prime Minister, or, as I say, Clement Attlee does leap out of his grave. If Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister and doesn't accept and acknowledge and face that reality, then he's doomed. But the point is, as I say, frankly, it is impossible to see at the moment how he could do a worse job than the current incumbent at Downing Street.
Most definitely. And what's your appraisal, Dan, of Reform's candidate, local plumber Robert Kenyon? Are Reform turning into the Green Party Tribute Act?
I think, well, I think I said it yesterday, I think the key, one of the key things is Reform have learnt their lesson from Gorton. And this isn't hindsight. I said it at the time. I said Matthew Gorton is the wrong candidate for that seat. And if you speak to people within Reform privately, Reform will acknowledge that. Now, so in terms of his biography, I think he's a much, much smarter choice. And he's exactly the sort of candidate that Reform needed. However, once again, he's not even been a candidate for 24 hours. There are already these questions now being asked about some of his social media posts, some of his online positions, some of his historic tweets. There are reports that his Twitter account was suspended. You've got to go some of these days to get your Twitter account suspended. He's wiped all his social media background. So I think once again, there are potentially going to be questions asked about the extent to which Reform have got themselves into a position where they really have professionalised to the extent that they properly vet the candidates for these high-profile seats. But as I say, certainly in terms of biography, they've certainly learnt from Gorton and Denton.
Fantastic to see you, Dan. Thank you for your valuable time. Dan Hodges, commentator and columnist at The Mail on Sunday, one of the finest journalists in the land, with his assessment. And hearing what Dan's had to say there, he thinks that Andy Burnham may edge it in this by-election. But of course, it's all to play for. And 7 days is a long time in politics. What do you think about this, folks? Who is worse, Starmer or Burnham? Who's your choice for Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000. Lots more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, 8:22. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m, at which point the brilliant Julia Hartley-Brewer is live. Looking forward to catching up with Julia in just a few minutes. Time to hear about what's on the show. June has messaged the programme. Good morning, Mark. Your butcher guest said Andy Burnham was very friendly and likeable. Well, the farmers, the pensioners and the waspy women all said the same about Starmer before he did a U-turn on them. Burnham cannot be trusted not to do the same. Well, June, you're so right about that. And what about those high-profile entrepreneurs who urged us all to vote Labour in July 2024? They've changed their mind now. Let's head to Westminster and the Conservatives' Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith MP. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you on the show. So, higher than expected growth figures from the last set of figures that we've received. Inflation down from 3.3% to 2.8%. Labour have cracked the economy, haven't they?
Now, look, can I be honest? I'm really worried about this. We've got a producer price inflation, which is the cost that producers are seeing, of nearly 8%. That's what came through this month. And just like an egg going through a snake, for sure, that is coming down the track for ordinary households in their supermarket shopping. So, look, we all want an economy that grows.
Gold,
we all want our prices to be falling. We probably all understand that the impact of Iran is going to have some impact on that. But what we say is, the government has put so many headwinds on business. They've driven up the cost of employing people, hundreds of pages of extra red tape, big hikes in business rates, as well as all their tax changes. So there's quite a lot that the government can be doing to actually help businesses. Another one is not going ahead with the fuel duty tax rise that the Chancellor's planning for just a few months' time. That's what the government should be focusing on. It's great that inflation this month hasn't gone up. It went up the previous month. It's still higher than it was a year ago. And let's just see the government actually doing things, not just talking about things.
How close, Andrew, do you think the UK is to some significant financial crisis? Is it conceivable that we could have a Greece moment between now and the next election?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, we're already in a Greece moment in that the UK government is having to pay more to bondholders to buy its bonds, to finance the country's borrowing, than Greece is today. So we're already firmly in that territory, whether it's a Rachel Reeves or an Andy Burnham, more on premium. That is what is driving interest rates. And again, that's going to hit people in their mortgages, the highest for 30 years, higher than they ever were under the Conservatives. Now, are we going to have a default? Unfortunately, I think the trouble with this government is they're willing to keep helping themselves to other people's money and keep paying our creditors. So I don't believe in there's a likelihood of a default. I'm not a commentator or an expert economist. But unfortunately, what we are seeing is more and more tax, more and more borrowing, damaging the legacy of this country to hand on to the next generation, and no one in Whitehall being willing to get a grip to tackle things like welfare spending and actually bring the nation's finances back under control.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned the borrowing and the legacy of that. That's what makes this so immoral, so unethical, isn't it, Andrew? That future generations, future Brits that haven't even been born yet, will be shouldering the cost of a current administration that refuses to live within its means.
Correct. And look, this has been going on for longer than this administration, to be fair, but they are making it much, much worse. And in failing to take the hard decisions, not always popular in the short term, but hard decisions about reforming welfare, actually cutting back the size of the state, which is, consuming far more now of the national income than we can possibly hope to compete with some of the faster growing nations on this country. It is immoral to be passing a country down in worse state to the next generation. That's got to stop, and only by the sort of honest, hard truths that Kemi Badenoch is talking about, we and the Conservatives are talking about. Is any government ever going to get to grips with this issue?
Most definitely, and it is a real concern, isn't it? Particularly if you look at the world of business. Did you see that news, that statistic, underreported over the last few days, Andrew, that 1 in 6 members of the Sunday Times Rich List from last year have left the country? Can you explain to my viewers and listeners why that is such a worrying statistic?
Well, it makes us all worse off. Even that sometimes sounds counterintuitive. They're people who have chosen, they could choose to live anywhere in the world. They've chosen to live in our wonderful country with its many advantages. But unfortunately, changes that the government has made to try and tax the whole of their global wealth, whether that was created in different countries or even in a different generation, means that people are just being forced to flee. And it's not just the people who are already wealthy. It's also the biggest group of emigres, the people who are leaving the country, are young people between the ages of 16 and 30. They're the business leaders of the future, the architects, the scientists, the creatives. And they are also feeling that this country is so now hostile to wealth creators, to people who've got a bit of ambition, who are trying to get on in life, trying to do well for their family, that very, very sadly, they see more opportunities overseas. Now, big focus of Conservative government, next Conservative government, what I'm doing in business is properly getting back on the side of wealth creators and risk takers and making sure that we have a tax regime that, whilst it's fair to everybody, does allow people to come here, spend their money, contribute to the UK economy, pay taxes, but without some of the absolute swinging Soviet-style tax measures that this government has been imposing on people.
Meanwhile, you've got the Chancellor floating the idea of price controls on basic food items. That's a government that's lost control of the economy. You can't dictate to businesses how much to charge for their products, can you?
No, this is a terrible idea. I mean, we know it's a terrible idea because we've seen it in places like Cuba and Venezuela and other parts of the developing world. It never works. Politicians love to put on price caps. They never remove them. It would have all sorts of unintended consequences or very foreseeable consequences all the way down the food supply chain. What are our poor farmers to do when their products are being price capped? And instead, the government has a lot that it could do. The government has been putting headwinds. Yes, some of them are from Iran and the cost of fuel, but many of them are the cost of hiring people that the government's driven up, the hikes in business rates, the increase in national insurance, packaging taxes, sugar taxes, all the things that this government spent 18 to 2 years doing, piling on costs on business. The chickens are coming home to roost, and it would be completely wrong to cap the price of eggs.
Andrew, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your valuable time and have a good Wednesday. Andrew Griffith is the Shadow Business Secretary for the Conservatives. He's not wrong. And by the way, what a refreshingly honest answer, Christian, from Andrew Griffith about the government and living not within their means. And he said this has been going on for a long time. An acknowledgement that this happened under the Conservatives too. The cult of welfarism, the debts, in my view, COVID overreaction, the lockdowns. We have been giving it large for too long now and we're paying the price. John is in Kent. Good morning, John.
Hello, Mark. Good morning to everyone.
Welcome to Talk Breakfast. What do you think about Andy Burnham? Is he the answer for this country? Would he be better than Starmer?
No, he'd be the same man, but just wearing jeans. Andy Burnham's memory is very weak. I've checked this twice, Mark. Howard Wilson's government closed 290 coal mines. Mrs. Thatcher's government closed 160. The only difference is that Wilson's government did it over a longer period. That's a fact. I've double-checked it. Second fact, in 1968, Secretary of State for Education Edward Short, Labour, he withdrew free milk for secondary schools. Mrs. Thatcher, 3 years later, took out milk for children at primary schools. Labour were the first. So Mr. Burnham is, I hate to say it, a bit of a fool.
Do you think he's going to win this by-election, John?
No, I hope he doesn't, because this business of him being a local lad, it's all a bit vague. And the Plumber chap actually lives in Makerfield. I mean, I just don't understand Labour. They never get it right. They always mess up. Anyway, that's it.
Well, John, I agree with you. I mean, they're just simply attached to the idea of socialism, which is the failed idea that never seems to go away.
Yeah. It always ends in disaster, Mark. It's so sad. I've been following politics for 60 years, and I don't know why we can't get, I don't know why we can't get decent people.
Well, I know what you mean. I think it's all about leadership, isn't it, John? And if you go back to the 1980s, I know she made mistakes. She wasn't perfect. But if you look at Britain in 79 and how things were by 87, Britain was unrecognisable. A global economic, political, diplomatic and military powerhouse. That point was so good that I silenced John. That is how good I am. Folks, it is Talk Breakfast. So much more to get through. 8:32. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Your opinions count. 03444991000. Lots to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, lovely to have your company. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. 8:35, Julia Hartley-Brewer live at 10 a.m. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Let's take a voice note from Dan.
Morning, Mark. I just heard one of your other callers say that we're doomed. We're not doomed. The great British public will come through whatever the Labour Party inflict on us. Unfortunately, this is necessary pain for long-term gain. I said to a mate of mine before the last general election who was hoping that reform were going to get straight in, I said, no, the country will go to Labour. Labour will show themselves to be way worse than the Tories. It's going to be a tough 5 years, but we've got to suck it up. And at that point, reform will get in at the next general election. Unfortunately, we've got to go through this embarrassment in order to get the people in who are actually going to fix the country. So let them make it worse. We'll get through it. Much better times to come.
Dan, thank you for that positive message. We needed to hear it. What about Channel 4 and this shocking scandal that's emerging? Allegations of rapes on the Married at First Sight show, which is one of Channel 4's biggest hits. Well, what about this fascinating column in today's Sun newspaper as series axed over lurid claims after Big Brother, X Factor and Love Island? Is Married at First Sight the scandal, the wake-up call, the reality that TV needs? Well, Colin Robinson is the columnist at The Sun who wrote that, and he joins me now. Good morning, Colin.
Morning, Mark.
What are the allegations here? They seem to be very serious.
They're very serious, and they come from... Well, there's a number of things going on. So on Monday night, Panorama runs a programme in which they make some allegations from women who've been on the show who say effectively they were raped, there was sexual assault, there was terrible things that went on, and that the production company and the channel itself kind of knew about this, but either ignored them or just carried on regardless.
Because complaints were made at the time.
Complaints were made at the time, yeah.
Now, this is a massive show for Channel 4, one of their rare ratings hits these days. and it's been running for many seasons. And there are two interested parties here. It's Channel 4, who are the broadcaster, and the production company that make it, CPL.
CPL, yeah.
And, I mean, where do you see this going? How's it going to play out? Could this end in criminal charges? The series has been axed now, probably will never come back.
Well, it might. I mean, Channel 4 will be hoping it does come back, and they hope they can get through this. Their position is, we are, whiter than white. We've done everything that we should have done. Some of this isn't true, etc., etc. But they've ordered an external investigation, so we'll see what that comes out with. But it doesn't look good. Last night, the Met Police came on board and said, "Look, we've seen all these allegations that appeared in the programme Panorama on Monday night. We'd like to hear from the people involved." So if those people then go to the police and it becomes a criminal matter, then Channel 4's in some real trouble, and it's not looking good for them. And
also its optics, its reputation, isn't it? And that's a big problem for the channel and for the production company and this particular brand. What is the format of the show?
The format of the show is essentially they get young people, fairly young people, chuck them together, and they're essentially fused together in marriage, if you like. It's called Married at First Sight. They don't actually get married, so it's not a legally binding.
So it's a kind of a dating show, a little bit like Love Island.
It's a bit like Love Island. It's kind of a hyper speed. They quickly date, they go on honeymoon, and they wrap everything up really quickly, and then they sort of live together. And the whole premise is how do they get on with each other, and what happens when people who've just met suddenly launch into this lifelong union. What will happen? Well, you know what's going to happen with that. They're going to fall out. They're going to have rows, and they're going to say, actually, who the hell are you? I don't know you. You don't know me. This will end in tears. And that is ultimately what happens most of the time. I mean, you do get some people who say we're in love, etc., etc. But mostly you get you could tune in and just see there's some horrible behaviour going on, from the women to the men to the women. I mean, it's designed for chaos.
And for conflict and for trauma, probably. And so notwithstanding allegations of rape, it can be a very uncomfortable experience psychologically, even if such a crime doesn't happen.
Well, exactly. I mean, and this is the thing, and you know this, having worked in television, that TV is incredibly manipulative and exploitative, and that is part of the bargain. So a lot of the time you'll get these people going on this, and they think they know what they're getting into. They've watched the show, etc., etc., and they see that. And a lot of the time they'll say, "Well, I won't be like that. I know how it works. You see it on Big Brother. I'll game this show." But actually, behind the scenes, producers are very clever in the sort of the mind games that they play, and also in the editing process as well. I mean, you saw it with I'm a Celebrity, which is obviously not criminal charge or anything like that, but big stars kicking off with ITV saying, you edited me in such a way that that's not me, you've made me look stupid, you've damaged my mental health, etc., etc. So the producers, the TV channels, they've always got the upper hand here, and that's the thing, and they know that.
Most definitely. Could this spell the end of reality TV?
I don't think it will spell the end of reality TV, because it's an incredibly lucrative format, and the vast majority, it has to be said, of reality TV programmes do not cause the kind of things that are being alleged right now. A lot of it is just fun. It's not about. It can be kind of like excitable, and people can get cross and shout at each other. But ultimately, it's tame compared to some of the things we're hearing now.
I just wonder whether this sort of format crosses a line, because Big Brother is, I think, perhaps a bit easier to police and to manage, because you've essentially got the housemates, there are cameras everywhere, the sleeping areas are communal, and if someone's got a problem they can go into the diary room, they can go and get some help. And as you well know, shows like Big Brother spend a lot of money on psychologists and psychiatrists to vet people in advance, and also to be available whilst the show's going out. But this is a format that encourages people to connect romantically, and I'm assuming to actually have a full relationship, all under the auspices of this format. That's surely asking for trouble.
It's absolutely asking for trouble. I mean, as I say in the piece today, the name of the show is asking for trouble. Married at First Sight. That's a problem.
It's dysfunctional, isn't
People just don't do that.
It's what the Americans would call messed up.
It's messed up. And actually, American one's even tougher, because actually over there it is a legally binding contract. So you are actually getting married. We don't do that on the UK show, and I don't think they do that on the Australian show as well.
But Channel 4 will pay for the accommodation and for a bedroom in which a sexual act could occur.
Yeah,
there's a TV company that's bankrolling this.
They are encouraging this because
it's
that makes
different
great
to Blind
television.
Date. Do you remember Cilla Black?
Oh, those are those halcyon days.
Right, what do you think? They would create the introduction, and they probably cover the tab for dinner. But apart from that, it's over to you.
Over to you. Yeah.
Whereas this time you've got a production company and a TV network that are paying for the whole thing.
But that's because somebody looked at Blind Date. I mean, all these shows revolve around Blind Date, boy meets girl, or that kind of thing, or boy meets boy, girl meets
Matchmaker.
Matchmaker. And actually, reality TV is all about, being real. So reality TV isn't just a formatted show, quiz show, whatever. It's about what happens behind the scenes. What happens when they don't think the cameras are on them. That's Big Brother idea of 24/7, always on, and that kind of pressure cooker environment just drives people mad.
Most definitely. Producer Christian is obsessed with the show. It's all he watches, and he particularly enjoyed the sex workshop episode. Are you familiar with this?
I haven't seen that one, but
he's watched it 3 times. Apparently, it transformed things at home.
A sex
That's
workshop.
not good. But I mean, this is we can laugh about it, but we've also got these serious allegations, and we have a history of people going on reality shows and suffering trauma, having mental health issues, suicide attempts, X Factor, Big Brother. The list goes on of people that feel very damaged by some of these shows.
And that's kind of inevitable as well. If you look at the way they're set up, that what you're trying to do is pump as much action out of people as you possibly can. Now, people will go into these shows, and we live in a world now where everybody's on TikTok. They're broadcasting themselves, they're tweeting, they've got on Facebook, on TikTok, all the rest of it. So they're putting themselves out there. So producers think, well, there's this enormous reservoir of people to choose from who are kind of like show-offs, and they think, yeah, I've got this because I'm in charge of my Twitter and my TikTok and all the rest of it. But once they get on TV, the power is taken away from them, and that's the problem. Then the mental health thing kicks in, because actually in the rise of people showing off, we've also had a massive rise of people having mental health problems. And so you put the two of them together, and then you're in real trouble, because a lot of this, what we're talking about here, is not so much the format of the show, which is in itself kind of chaotic. We're talking about the vetting procedures and the duty of care to the people that go on to that show. I mean, a lot of people are saying, look, I told you that person was a bad person, but you still allowed him to go on the show. And that's the real problem here. It almost doesn't matter what the format is. If you're allowing people on who have got a history of terrible behaviour, then you're not doing your duty of care.
What does it say about our society that we're consuming shows like this?
Well, I think it's a reflection of where we are. We're a hyper-online, combative, very divisive, noisy, shouty, argumentative society. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just when it gets exploited... I always think back to have you ever read the book Popcorn by Ben Elton?
Yes, a brilliant book.
Brilliant book, and the kind of denouement, spoiler alert, sorry, but the denouement of that is that someone's holding some hostages, and he's effectively said, I will kill all these hostages, and he holds up a TV rating thing. I'm going live on TV, here's my ratings thing, I will kill these hostages unless those ratings go down. And what happens? They don't go down.
That's exactly
because people will watch pretty much anything, and TV producers know that. So what producers need to do, and what we've got here, is they need to work out, when do I stop myself? And I don't think what we're seeing now is they've done that. They've not stopped themselves when they should have done. They've not listened to people they should have done.
Fascinating coverage in The Sun, I've got to say, after Big Brother, X Factor and Love Island. Is Married at First Sight the scandal, the wake-up call that reality TV needs? It's a brilliant piece, and Colin, a legend of journalism, lovely to have you in the studio. Always enjoy your coverage at The Sun. I think 2 decades you've been there now, and you still look about 23. What's going on?
That's very kind. I'm not going on reality TV.
I know, it's all the Botox. Folks, lots more to get through. Starmer versus Burnham, your choice for Prime Minister. 8:45, this is Talk Breakfast.
wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Go.
I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:48 Talk Breakfast, a very busy hour to come, and Julia up at 10. Our question this morning is a simple one. Is Starmer better or worse than Burnham? Which of the two men is the lesser of either evil? Here is Stuart with a voice note.
Hiya, Mark. Stuart from Wigan. I've just been unfortunate enough, actually, to listen to that from King's Butchers in Ashton. I've been in there. Honestly, I really can't believe the stupidity of some people. Conservatives haven't been in for 20 years, they're in for 14 years. And the country were a lot better than it is now after Labour's been in for 2. Seriously, we need somebody that knows how to run things. Burnham, he lost to Corbyn, for Christ's sake. How bad do you have to be, lose to a terrorist sympathising scumbag like him? The bloke's a bloody idiot. Up reform, come on reform, we need reform. Labour ain't getting in round here. Not a chance.
Stuart, a brilliant voice note. Thank you for your articulacy. I think you made a lot of points there that I agree with. I don't get it with Burnham. I don't buy this whole King of the North thing. I'm sorry. I'm not having it. I think he's a charlatan. I actually think, Stuart, and this will shock you, because Labour aren't going to call an election, right? Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So I think we keep Starmer. I really do. He's terrible. He's the worst Prime Minister ever. I'd have him over Burnham, in my humble opinion. But what do I know? Keith in Hampshire. Good morning, Mark. Burnham, on that subject, it wasn't Mrs. Thatcher that caused the so-called deindustrialisation of the country. It was the trade union movement who demanded more money and wages for less productivity. Thankfully, although not ideally, her government got the country working again. Thank you for that. What about this? Good morning, Mark. Mark in Worcester here. First time I have ever messaged the show, but I felt compelled to. What was that guy from Makerfield talking about? Maggie left office 36 years ago, and they're still blaming her for the state of the country as it is now. We've had 9 prime ministers since then. They are living in the past. They need to look closer to home and how Labour governments have bankrupted this country each time. Anne is in Gwynedd. Hello, Anne.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you on the show. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. What do you think?
Well, looking at the two men, I think the Manchester bloke is more personal than Starmer. But regarding Europe, his play on words, any fool could see that how he worded it, he could backtrack.
Yeah.
Has he got a daughter regarding men, trans women going into ladies' loos?
I know.
I mean, that's frightening. And years ago, there used to be a song, and I can't remember the whole of it, but it was whatever king shall reign, I'll be the vicar of Bracer. And that says it for me, for Starmer and t'other one. They're not interested in Britain. They're only interested in the power that they think they will get being a prime minister. And that's not what we want. We want somebody who believes in the people and the country.
Anne, I couldn't agree more. Amen to that. What a lovely call. Please call me again soon, Anne, and have a lovely day. Have a great Wednesday in Gwynedd, which my producer, the brilliant Christian Mitchell, has taught me to say correctly. Gwynedd, with a soft TH at the end. Shall we have a bit of sport? Because let me tell you, it's massive today.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
What a time to be alive. Charlie Wyatt, chief football writer at The Sun. It's not impossible, Charlie, that Arsenal become champions of Europe as well as being champions of England and Tottenham go down in the same season. That could happen.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Arsenal, they've bagged their first title for 22 years. There's lots of Arsenal fans who are waking up or yet to wake up who are going to have blinding hangovers. I've just seen some footage of Arsenal's players walking around the Emirates at 5 o'clock this morning, sort of taking everything in. But as you said, it could still be doomsday scenario for Tottenham. They failed to beat hopeless Chelsea, so it still goes down to the last day. So now all eyes are going to be on Tottenham and West Ham in terms of the final day and which one's going to stay up. But Arsenal, they've waited a long time for this, and they've still, of course, could be champions of Europe as well when they've got the Champions League final against PSG on Saturday week.
Well, it is a massive moment for Arsenal. They've been waiting over 2 decades for this Premier League win, Charlie.
Yeah, it's been excruciating. I mean, they've spent over £1 billion under Mikel Arteta. So, it's not, they've paid for it. It's not like Leicester when they won it at 5,000 to 1 10 years ago. But look, Arsenal deserve winners. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They've not been pretty to watch. Some of their games have been very functional. But look, we should not knock. It's amazing how many people didn't want Arsenal to win the title, actually. A lot of people wanted Manchester City. But I think it's good to have a different team. We've had Manchester City. We've, of course, had Liverpool as well last season under Jurgen Klopp. So I think it's good to have a different team. I think Arsenal deserve to win it. They've been the best team. Manchester City blew it last night by losing Bournemouth. And, of course, it's emerged that Pep Guardiola is definitely going to be leaving. So, yeah, lots of change there. But I think Mikel Arteta, former captain at Arsenal, now title-winning manager.
Well, they've bagged the Premier League. If they do the double and become champions of Europe, this will be the greatest season in their history, surely.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. It's funny, isn't it? These sort of 10 days, it could have been an absolute disaster and not win anything. But now they've won the league. And as you say, I think previously they've won the double under other managers. They've gone a whole season unbeaten in 2003, 2004. But if they win the league and win the Champions League, something they have never done before, it was 20 years, their only appearance in the final. But if they win the league and the Champions League, it will be the best season, as you say, in their history. Absolutely unmatched, an incredible achievement. And we'll then really have to take our hats off to Mikel Arteta.
Well, with this victory in the Premier League, they can't be called bottlers anymore, can they, Charlie? Which was something that haunted them slightly in recent seasons. There was a fear that they were always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Well, they've bagged the top trophy. They're the finest club in all England. What chances of them winning the Champions League final?
Well, everyone's writing them off and will continue to do so. Look, they've got the chance. PSG are not unbeatable. PSG failed to win 10 of their 34 league games. Obviously, the French league's not particularly strong as well. So Arsenal have definitely got a chance. I don't think it's going to be a pretty final because watching Arsenal a lot of the time isn't pleasing on there. But I think they could do it. I really think Arsenal could win the Champions League and Arsenal will turn Budapest on Saturday night red.
Most definitely. Well, it's a cup, so as you know, Charlie, anything can happen. My goodness, what a shocker for Southampton. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, basically they've been caught out for spying. And we saw that. There was a picture. It wasn't particularly high-tech spying. It was a bloke standing behind the tree with an iPhone at Middlesbrough. So, it wasn't exactly James Bond stuff.
No, was it Inspector Clouseau, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. But look, they've coughed and they've admitted to 2 other accounts, other matches as well. But I think other teams have felt they've been spied. Teams know 3 or 4 minutes into a game, managers can tell whether they've been watched. They really can. And so they've been chucked out the playoffs and been given a 4 points deduction for next season. So Middlesbrough are back in the playoff final. They're going to be playing Hull. And there will be a lot of very, very angry Southampton fans with the club, but particularly the manager, who quite clearly okayed all of this.
Yes, I mean, I feel a bit sorry for the Middlesbrough players because they were probably in their local Wetherspoons sinking a few pints, thinking the season was over. They better get in that sauna, hadn't they?
I tell you what, when you know that you might be getting a few £100,000 bonus for getting your team into the Premier League, I think they've been keeping themselves into shape, to be fair.
Charlie, always a treat to have you. Oh, listen, a quick one. I know it's impossible to say, but Spurs versus West Ham, who do you think's probably going down?
I think I'll probably go to... I was going to go to Crystal Palace Arsenal. I'm going to probably go and watch Spurs now. I still think West Ham are going to go now.
Charlie, we'll catch up soon. Lovely to have you on the show, the legendary chief football writer at the Sun newspaper. I've got some good news for you folks. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at Talk Sport are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas are sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets and your very own Adidas official match ball, which is called Trion. Be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadia. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here is how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Brilliant stuff. Good luck to one and all. Really looking forward to the World Cup this particular summer. It's 8:59, listening to Talk Breakfast. A very big hour to come. We've got the clash of the Titans. Labour's Graham Stringer versus the Conservatives' Mark Francois on the big political stories of the day. Starmer versus Burnham. Who do you want to lead the country? Don't go anywhere.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 9, top of the morning. Happy Wednesday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle on breakfast. Jez is back tomorrow. And breaking this morning, Andy Burnham blasts the Iron Lady as he says he will reverse Thatcher's legacy. So is Britain about to go full socialist if he gets into number 10? Meanwhile, the bad headlines keep on coming for the leader of the North. Of course, the King of the North, self-appointed, his handling of the grooming gangs scandal, his ultra-woke position on the definition of a woman. This hour, Burnham under the microscope. Meanwhile, the cost of HS2 tops £100 billion. We've got the inside story on this national scandal. And our question to you this morning is a simple one. Who would make a better Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, or do we keep Starmer? Is he the devil we know? My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. You can hear us on the radio, DAB Plus in app and online. You can also watch the show. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. We've also got more breaking news, which is that UK inflation has gone from 3.3% in March to 2.8% last month, which is very good news. Inflation has come down. Sadly, it looks like a stay of execution with what's happening in the Middle East, and I would argue the consequences of two ruinous budgets. It's likely that inflation will continue to rise in the months ahead. But we do welcome that brief downward correction. Now, Andy Burnham would like to be the MP for Makerfield. He's begun his campaign with this video in which he attacks the legacy of Margaret Thatcher.
It was growing up in and around these streets that I saw what Thatcher's government did to places like this, the deindustrialisation, the draining away of economic, social and political power. It left places like Makerfield behind, and Britain has been on that path for the last 40 years, and it was the sense of injustice I got about the way this country is run that took me towards politics.
What all of these experiences have taught me is that Westminster doesn't work for people in this part of the world and communities like this across the UK.
Well, I'm delighted to say that Graham Stringer joins us, Labour MP for Blexley and Middleton South, and Mark Francois MP, a Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Minister. Mark, this idea that Thatcher somehow deindustrialised the country and really threw the North under the bus, this is a tired political trope, isn't it?
It is. Like Andy Burnham, whatever he is, he ain't no Margaret Thatcher. And Margaret Thatcher turned this country around. Before she came to power, we were the sick man of Europe. We were crippled by strikes. We had the winter of discontent. We were a basket case. Margaret Thatcher, by strength of will, turned that around. She helped curb excessive trade union power. With Ronald Reagan, she won the Cold War at that time, and the Berlin Wall came down and Eastern Europe was freed. So Andy Burnham's entitled to his opinion, but he's on the wrong side of history. I mean, Graham Stringer, we had 5.4% growth in 1987 under Margaret Thatcher. You would bite your hand off for that now, wouldn't you?
We hit 3 million unemployed for the first time in the early 80s. Margaret Thatcher's legacy is mixed. She did some good things, but I agree with Andy Burnham, and I don't agree with him about everything. That the monetary policies, or what was a major credit squeeze, to give it its old name, destroyed many of our industries, and there have been no real attempts to replace those industries in the northern cities. And we can't, I mean, Mark and I would agree about sovereignty and independence and leaving the European Union, but you can't have real sovereignty and independence if you don't have a proper industrial base and secure supply lines. Margaret Thatcher destroyed much of the industry with very tight control of the money supply, and I think we still live with that legacy today.
Well, I just wonder about legacies, Mark, because I believe that the legacy of Thatcher is that the UK is the 5th biggest economy in the world. I think she deserves credit for that.
Well, so do I. So Graham and I are going to disagree on her legacy, but we would agree with her probably on Europe. Look, I've got here's the book. I'm not Andy Burnham's book agent, but this is the book, Head North. He wrote with Steve Rotherham in 2024. Steve Rotherham, the regional mayor for Liverpool, and Burnham's a proper lefty. And people need to realise that. And if you read this book, he's very much a federalist when it comes to Europe. He said at the Labour Party conference, he hoped that within his lifetime we would rejoin the EU. That's totally contrary to the democratic will of the British people in the EU referendum. He's a net zero fanatic. And I have to say, in terms of the effect on British industry, what Miliband is doing is sort of eco-loon policies, making energy so expensive. We have the most expensive electricity in the developed world in this country. That is pushing many British businesses out of business. And we learned this morning the insane decision that Starmer's government are going to relax sanctions on the imports of Russian hydrocarbons because they won't drill in the North Sea and exploit our own God-given assets in that area. So under this government, under Miliband, who might yet want to enter the lists, and remember Burnham is a net zero fanatic too, just read the book, then we are in the insane position that we're making it easier for the Russians to sell us hydrocarbons whilst we're not opening up new licenses to drill in the North Sea. This is socialist madness, and Andy Burnham supports it.
Graham, I suspect you agree with Mark on that one regarding net zero. When you're concerned about the deindustrialisation of the country, net zero is surely partly responsible.
I have made that point in written articles on the floor of the House of Commons. I'm a member of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. I think net zero is mad. We should be using our own oil. We have borrowed too much money as a country, partly because of COVID, where we borrowed 400 billion, partly because of some other policies. And we're now, having borrowed that money, which will be paid off by our children and grandchildren, we're now saying that there won't be jobs for those people because we're not investing in our natural resources.
I agree.
We're buying gas from Norway, which is effectively the same gas field in the North Sea as we could exploit, and creating jobs in Norway. And if you're concerned about carbon dioxide, there's a parliamentary answer to a member of the House of Lords that pointed out that importing gas, whether it's from Norway or Qatar, you create 3 times as much carbon dioxide as you would if we used our own natural gases. So if you're looking for a sort of verbal punch-up with Mark on these things, I'm the wrong person, really. I agree on those issues,
Graham,
even if we're not.
Yeah,
we're not going to agree on Thatcher's legacy.
No, but Graham, I take the view that if you were Prime Minister, the fortunes of this country would improve immeasurably. I'd love you to have the support of 81 Labour MPs because you speak a lot of sense. What do you think about Andy Burnham? Some of my viewers and listeners, Graham, think that actually he'll be worse than Starmer, that he'll double down on net zero, he'll double down on wokery, he'll double down on spending and a country that doesn't live within its means.
And his performance as a minister, and he held a number of senior positions, was very different from his position trying to get selected as Prime Minister. My suspicion is that he will go back to being a centralist if he ever gets back into Parliament and back into the Cabinet, either as a minister or as
Would that be dishonest?
Prime Minister.
Graham, would that be dishonest?
Well, it would be a contradiction to what he's saying. So in that sense, yes. If he turned round. But if when he was Health Secretary and Shadow Health Secretary, Andy was completely against decentralisation. When in Manchester at the time we suggested that we wanted a decentralised health service, which has arrived, Andy was vociferous, I think is the kindest way to say, against it. Now he's the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He's strongly in favour of it. I mean, people are entitled to change their minds, but it's also, I don't forget these things, and nobody else should. I mean, people are entitled to change their mind. It doesn't necessarily make them a liar if they change their mind.
It's a damning anecdote, isn't it, Mark? I'm going to have to be honest with you, Mark, and I don't think that you would indulge in this unparliamentary language, but luckily we're not in Parliament, we are on talk. I take the view, Mark Francois, that Andy Burnham is a preening narcissist and a completely dishonest, disingenuous politician.
OK, we're on Talk TV, so I'll say he's a chameleon. And I think what he's doing, very evidently, is he's playing to the left of the Labour Party because he thinks that is the best way that he might inherit the crown. I think we all know that the Prime Minister is damaged goods. Most people expect him to be replaced by somebody, and Burnham is very clearly vying for that job. But, you know, sorry to make the point again, but if you read the book, written, as it were, in peacetime, when he was Mayor of Greater Manchester, he gives himself away on things like Europe, on things like net zero. Andy Burnham is definitely a lefty and a serious lefty, and I believe he would make a disaster as Prime Minister, but it's up to the people of Makerfield what they want to do about that.
However, Mark, you know the House of Commons inside out, you know the world of Westminster politics. Given the fact that Andy Burnham is a more skilled communicator than Keir Starmer, a better political operator, could the fortunes of the country improve just having a Prime Minister that knows how to do politics? Will that help things?
Well, I think Graham and I might agree. You could ask him in a minute. You know, Keir Starmer is not a great communicator. We've had, I mean, I lose track. I think it's 17 U-turns now in the 2 years of his premiership. So, no, he's not a great man at getting his message across. But you have to ask yourself, however you communicate it, what is the fundamental message? And under Burnham, the message would be, I want to rejoin the European Union, regardless of the democratic will of the people. I want to go full tonto on net zero. And oh, by the way, he's an absolute fanatic for proportional representation. Again, we had a referendum on that in this country, I think in 2011 from memory, and we emphatically rejected that by a margin of over 2-1. So Andy Burnham wants to join the EU, he wants PR, and he wants full tonto net zero. I don't think that would make him a good Prime Minister.
Graham, I'm fascinated by your suggestion that if Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he will shift into the political centre ground, closer to where you are. And I hope that happens, Graham, if he becomes Prime Minister. But if he does, there will be hell to pay from those Labour backbenchers who will be investing their hopes in Burnham for a left-wing progressive agenda. If he doesn't deliver that, surely there'll be another civil war, and here we go again.
Possibly. But before we get there, there is an assumption in your questions that Andy would automatically become leader of the Labour Party and therefore Prime Minister. There's a long way to go before that. One of the things I would like is for some serious questions and interrogation of both Andy and anybody else who wants to become leader of the Labour Party. And because the country's facing a number of real problems. What Andy says he wants to spend more money. Is he going to borrow it? Is he going to put taxes up? He said some odd things about the bond markets.
Yeah.
We need answers to questions on that. We certainly need answers to how you industrialise while we're not investing in our natural energy resources. People forget, but it's not that long ago since Labour Party policy was in favour of fracking. Are we going to go back to that? Are we not going to go back to that? What are we going to do about the economy to stimulate it? What are we going to do to improve the services in the NHS? One can go on for a long time about the serious issues facing us. Probably the most important one, and again, this is a disaster for getting Mark and I to disagree, but we cannot go on not investing in our defence, and that's going to cost a great deal of money. And Andy has to answer that question, and anybody else who wants to be leader of the Labour Party. That's where the serious issues are.
Graham, you're going to have to stop talking so much sense because you'll lose the Labour whip. Mark Francois. The Conservatives on many occasions have acted in the national interest of this country, haven't they? That's almost in the DNA of the Tory party, the British national interest. Would you agree with that?
I would hope so.
Yeah, I think so, and it's my view as well. Therefore, it would be the right thing to do not to run a candidate in Makerfield in order to keep this left-wing figure of Andy Burnham out at number 10. That would be the right thing to do. Keep him out of the Commons. The Tories can do that.
No, I disagree. I think it's up to the people of Makerfield who they want to elect. This by-election has a national significance. I think we should run a candidate. I'm afraid, Mark, you've picked the wrong day to ask me because we're fighting 2 by-elections in Rayleigh at the moment after the local elections because a Reform councillor resigned after 4 days in office. 4 days he lasted, and he's going to cost my constituents £35,000 to run those 2 by-elections. So I don't think Reform are standing down in that by-election, so I don't see why we should stand down in Makerfield.
Well, Mark, what you can do... You
picked the wrong day to ask me, Mark.
Well, I mean, you know, I got out of the bed the wrong side this morning. But, Mark, I mean, you have the power. You can stop Andy Burnham. And I think that my viewers and listeners will congratulate you. I think it will age very well. I think history will look kindly on the Conservatives if they thwart Andy Burnham by giving Reform a clear run at this.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to stand the candidate, Mark, and so I understand.
So party first, country second.
Well, no, I don't know. We should allow people who want to vote Conservative in Makerfield an opportunity to vote Conservative. And I understand that Rupert Lowe is now going to stand a Restore candidate in Makerfield. So people, if they want, I'd rather they voted Conservative, can vote for that candidate. So I don't see any reason why any other party, particularly with Reform's very anti-conservative rhetoric, should stand aside to do them a favour. All parties will stand candidates, all parties will make their case, and properly and democratically, this will ultimately be a decision not for any party headquarters, Mark, but for the electors of Makerfield. It's their choice.
And Graham Stringer, before we let you and Mark go, you mentioned your work with the Global Warming Policy Foundation. According to the Times newspaper today, temperatures are set to soar this weekend. And there is a suggestion that the UK should set maximum working temperature rules. What do you make of all of that?
Can I just follow up on a Conservative candidate?
Sure.
It's obviously not my business.
Yeah, go for it.
Whether there's a Conservative candidate or not, that's for the Conservatives. But I think one of the problems with this by-election is it looks as though getting an MP to resign, getting Andy to potentially give up his position of Mayor of Greater Manchester, it looks like taking the electorate for granted and manipulating the situation. And that would, any party that wants to be in government in this country should give people the opportunity to vote for it. Not to do that looks like manipulation. In terms of maximum temperatures, yes, when you look at the story, you know, we should ensure that places are fit for people to work in. But when you read the story with all the cries of crisis about global warming, you see the last time in May that those temperatures were reached, it was 20 years ago. It's not unprecedented.
Two of my favourite politicians, my deep thanks to Graham Stringer, MP, the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South, and the marvellous Mark Francois, Conservative MP and Shadow Defence minister. What a grown-up conversation that was, with sensible views on both sides. What do you think, folks? Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? 9:22. This is Talk Breakfast.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
I'm
loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:26 Talk Breakfast. Thank you so much for your company yesterday and today. Jezza is back, and let me tell you, he's coming in hot tomorrow at 6 a.m. Jeremy Carl back in The Breakfast Show. He's looking after my show on Friday. I'm back Saturday at 6 a.m. Look forward to that. Off the rails. The HS2 fiasco is set to cost over £100 billion. It might not open until 2039 with slower trains, and it won't go to the original destination. Quite shocking. The real stat that caught our eye is that HS2 will likely cost more than NASA's Artemis moon mission as the cost continues to spiral. Let's get reaction from the chair of Stop HS2, Penny Gaines. Good morning, Penny.
Good morning, Mark.
Of course, you could have told us this years ago.
We did. We've always said that it's going to be hugely expensive. We've always thought that the time is massively underestimated, and we just don't think the benefits are going to be there. But the thing we've noticed over the years is they've had a number of reviews, and every review has come up with at least one of three changes. They've either decreased the scope, increased the budget, or delayed the opening time. And this one has done all three of them. So we've seen this before. And the other thing, she said yesterday that the cost of cancelling the project would be nearly as great as the cost of building it. I'm very sceptical about that, because they've still got at least £44 billion to spend, up to £60 billion. Cancelling it won't cost nearly as much as that. So we think there's still time to cancel it, and we think they ought to cancel it.
So if it were to be cancelled, you think we could still save, what, a couple of, maybe 20, 30 billion could still be saved?
Yes, absolutely.
In that region. But what would we, if we were to cancel it and save another 30, 40 billion, what would we then have for the investment we've made?
Well, we've lost that money already. I mean, it doesn't matter whether we complete it or not. We've already spent that £44 billion. So it's more about saving money in the future, because even if they did build it, they'd still be spending money to run the railway. So we've spent the money. It's sunk cost. It's a sunk cost.
But could we seriously have spent 40 or 50 billion and have no legacy from it whatsoever?
Yeah.
Because that's your proposal, is that we pull the plug and it's 50 bill down the drain. Surely we need to recover some legacy from this investment.
There are all sorts of things we could do with that money instead. We could use it for building local transport, improving the existing railways, but there's a lot of things we could do there.
Okay, well, that's quite interesting. And Penny, I suppose the problem we've had with this project from day one is the politics of it, that this was the grand projet, the brainchild of Tony Blair, and it's been continued by other administrations. This is what happens when politics collides with infrastructure, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. There's never been any critical scrutiny of it. It was pushed out just before the 2010 election by Gordon Brown's government. They are the ones who came up with the so-called gold plating, with the speed being, it was originally going to be 400 kilometres per hour before they dropped it to 360. They're the ones who came up with the route. They're the ones who made the decisions that did all the gold plating. They're the ones who said, let's build it starting from London to Birmingham. They're even the ones who said who created a company called High Speed Rail, or High Speed 2, and said, go and look at the rail problems in the country. Hint, we called you HS2. We think the answer is a high-speed railway. So there was never a time when it was properly scrutinised. And as it went through the Houses of Parliament, there were various votes. There were votes about whether they could spend some money on it, which passed because the proper scrutiny was going to come later. But after the next set of votes, it was like, oh, you've already voted for it, you can't change your mind now, we've already done that bit. So it's never been properly scrutinised. It was brought in, like you said, by the last Labour government.
A political vanity project, the equivalent of a great skyscraper, something that politicians could claim was their idea.
Absolutely, and that's something we've said on a number of occasions. So,
yes, it's politicians building monuments for themselves, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, and you can list the people who did it. It was like Andrea Jonas, the Labour Transport Minister, George Osborne, the Conservative Chancellor, Boris Johnson, who always liked a big project.
Yeah.
So there's been a number of them, and it's only recently now that the costs have been sort of starting to bite in the last 5 years that people like Rishi Sunak and Heidi Alexander implied that she'd looked at the cancelling it, but none of them took the brave decision to actually cancel the railway completely.
And the cost is obscene. I mean, what are we looking at, Penny? I saw a stat yesterday, and I think it's something in the region of £12,000 per inch of track. Is that right?
That's not a stat that sort of from us, but I've heard similar things.
It's in that ballpark, isn't it?
It is. It is an absolutely.
It's thousands of pounds per centimetre, whatever way you look at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
It's the most expensive high-speed railway in the world.
I mean, make it make sense. Penny, you will feel that you're on the right side of history here, that you called this out years ago. Can you give my viewers and listeners a sense of how far 100 billion would have gone if it had been spent on upgrading our existing rail infrastructure? What would we have if we'd spent the money on that?
Oh, we'd probably have electrification across the country in all the places that hasn't happened. We could have done whole loads of improvements. There were, I mean,
we would have the best rail infrastructure in Europe, wouldn't we? If we'd spent 100 billion on the existing network.
I think we absolutely would.
Wow.
We'd have had a much better railway system. The existing railway system would have been able to make improvements for almost since HS2 was first announced. There'd have been things that they could have done by now. They could be deciding what to do, when to do it. The Transpennine route could have had all the upgrades they're talking about. There's a huge load of things that they could have done.
Call me old-fashioned, Penny. We could also spend some of that 100 billion on a couple of buses and canals. And maybe a road or two, maybe, Penny, and call me old-fashioned, and I suspect I'll get cancelled for this. Some of that 100 billion could have fixed a couple of potholes.
Oh, maybe 3 potholes.
Make it make sense. Lovely to have you on the show, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you, Penny. Penny Gaines is the chair of Stop HS2. Well, I think she's been proved right. 100 million, a billion, it's a B, not an M, and more than the cost of NASA's trip to the moon. You couldn't make it up, could you? So much more to come. Who's worse, Burnham or Starmer? Here's a voice note from Laura.
Morning, Mark. Laura in Wiltshire. Interesting interview with Dan Hodges, who is usually on the money. I agree. But, you know, isn't it fantastic that what are the Labour Party doing? They are smearing the Reform candidate already. Oh, far-right, Nazi links. You know, they will scrape the barrel any way they can. And what Reform need to tackle them on is the real issues, which are Andy Burnham's policies and the fact that he's only parachuting in to this seat in order to challenge Keir Starmer. And actually, I think we're probably better off with the devil we know, because Starmer is ineffective and useless, but I think Andy Burnham could be dangerous. Anyway, great show.
Thank you, Laura. I agree with you. I'm actually going to start a campaign, Christian. Stick with Starmer. Because we're not going to get rid of this government. Turkeys do not vote for Christmas. So it's got 2 to 3 years of government to run before the next election. I would have Starmer, because I think Andy Burnham, as Mark Francois said, is a big-time lefty. So much more to come. Your calls as well. Starmer versus Andy Burnham. Your thoughts on that, plus texts as well. Text the word talking your message to 87222. Lots to come. We've saved our best till last.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:37 Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. And Andy Burnham has attacked the legacy of Margaret Thatcher as part of his campaign to win the Makerfield by-election. Becky has said, good morning, Mark. I wish they would stop going on about Thatcher's legacy. We've had 3 Labour governments since her. June says, Mark, the butcher guest you had on earlier said Andy Burnham was very friendly and likeable. Well, the farmers, the pensioners and the waspy women all said that about Starmer before his betrayal. This from an unnamed texter. Mark, it doesn't matter what positives you give about Thatcher. The northern coal mine closures generationally engraved hatred towards the Tory party. Even the next few generations that know nothing about coal have had it hammered into them to just hate Thatcher. It is ridiculous. What about this from Jackie? Good morning, Jackie. How are you? Thank you for watching the show. Jackie says, I enjoy talk so much. It's not the first time I've sent this kind of comment, but I want to say again how refreshing it is that Mark allows his guests time to talk. I vote talk, the best of all stations. Well, Jackie, thank you for that. We are nothing without you. And I want to let you talk because I'll be taking your calls before the top of the hour. But first, some more good news. We've had the breaking news that inflation has gone from 3.3% to 2.8%, which we welcome. That is a welcome correction. Unfortunately, it looks like a stay of execution before it goes up again. But I'll take 2.8. Meanwhile, knife robberies are down by more than a fifth as government action appears to be taking effect. Is it going to continue in that direction? Let's get the views of former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Peter, do you welcome this news? Knife robberies down by a fifth?
Oh, absolutely. And credit where it's due to the government and the various constabularies, police services that have worked hard to achieve this. Of course, they brought the figures down from an astronomically high number to a number that is still high, 12,000, but they do try to reassure us that they're doing more and they're going to continue with this initiative. The one great imponderable that we don't know, though, is how many people are still carrying knives, because we just simply are never accurately aware of that. But I'm not going to be churlish. I welcome this, and well done, the police and the government.
Would you like to see more stop and search, which is a politically controversial policy, Peter?
Absolutely. And I'm sure that featured as part of the way that they reduced these knife robberies. They did use a lot of data to target the particular areas where the crimes were exceptionally high. And that is, of course, a sensible thing to do. But yeah, stop and search should be embraced by the police. Unfortunately, it's been such a thorny subject for decade upon decade that many officers have shied away from doing it. I hear that officers on the front line in the Met are now very reluctant to do it because they fear a complaint where they may be branded racist and that could end their career. But it really is a vital tool and needs to be rolled out far, far wider, not only for knife crime, but for a whole range of crimes, in particular the shoplifting epidemic.
Most definitely. Well, that needs to be dealt with. I have a local co-op, of course, other supermarkets available, but I live near a co-op. And Peter, I was just chatting yesterday because there was a police car outside. Someone had been arrested, and one of the couriers who does deliveries from the co-op to people's houses said, oh, this happens several times a day. There's a cop car at the co-op, and this is quite a pleasant part of North London. And one of the people working at my local co-op, a young girl, about 23 years of age, was attacked by one of these shoplifters and had her nose broken, and she's now undergoing reconstruction surgery. And I've asked this person, will she now not go back and work at the co-op? She said, oh, no, she'll be back once she's better. Welcome to Broken Britain.
Oh, very much so. In fact, I got involved in a shoplifting incident at my local co-op just about a month ago when I managed to swing one of my size 12s in the direction of a fleeing shoplifter. I did connect, but didn't knock him from his feet, unfortunately. He dropped some of the loot that he'd stolen, but beat me in a foot race, not surprisingly. We have astonishing, unacceptable levels of violence, shoplifting, and so much more crime in Britain. Only this week, we heard all the stories about the high streets, the vape shops, the barber shops, the corner shops, all being used as fronts for money laundering and people smuggling and other illegal activity. The police lost the high streets. They need to regain them with the help from trading standards and many, many more people in law enforcement.
Completely, Peter. Listen, we will keep it tight because I know you're still battling the flu, but you sound fantastic. The show must go on. You've never called in sick in your life. I know that. Can we talk about the Epstein files? Police are investigating child sex abuse claims by two people. This is a horrible story that doesn't go away.
Yes, it won't. And it's going to run and run and run. Let's be grateful that the police are investigating these allegations. Should they find sufficient evidence then let's hope that anybody who may be responsible for such crimes are charged and put in front of a court of law.
Too right. Peter, brilliant to have you on the show, as always. We'll let you get back to that Lemsip and we'll catch up soon. Former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? It's over to your calls next. 9:43 Talk Breakfast.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
I'm
loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:45. Who's worse, Starmer or Burnham? Here is a voice note from Wayne.
Good morning, Mark. I've had a bit of a nightmare last night and it's all win-win for Keir Starmer. So, firstly, his beloved Arsenal won the league. But, worst of all, is Burnham's going to lose to Reform. Him and Wes are going to go head-to-head in the leadership challenge, and guess what? They're only going to keep Starmer in, and then his smug little gaslighting, obnoxious, nasally speaking grin will just absolutely send me over the edge, mate. The guy is always the worst person, the most inconspicuous, dull, boring person who just happens to constantly be in the right place at the right time. I'm just banging my head against the wall, Mark. I mean, I have won a massive mandate. I'm the most popular man in the world. I mean, come on, give us a break. If there is a Lord, Lord, help us.
Wayne, surely the voice note of the day, and you've given Rory Bremner a run for his money. Brilliant voice note. You're going to have to get off that fence at some point, though, Wayne. Brilliant, brilliant message. Thank you for that. Keep them coming. Thank you for all the calls, the texts. I'm going to get to more of your calls in just a moment. On HS2, Michael says that money, 100 billion, could have been used to subsidise rail fees. How can I get to Alicante for £28 from Gatwick, but somehow it cost me £48 to go by train from Worthing to London Victoria? That sums up the UK. HS2, Barry in Sunnyside says HS2 should have started in the north. Tories and Labour keep talking about levelling up. All of the money has been wasted in the south. John in Gravesend, Mark, I don't recall your guest Mark Francois complaining when Nigel stood down all Brexit Party candidates in 2019 to give Boris his majority. A bit hypocritical. Robin Burnley, so if Andy Burnham has an issue with deindustrialisation, I take it he'll sack Ed Miliband the minute he gets into number 10 for gross negligence. Ben in Hazelmere in Surrey. Hi, Mark. When thinking of the Makerfield election and Burnham saying whatever he feels he needs to get a vote, reminds me of the saying, king for a day, fool for a lifetime. And Vivian in Warwickshire. Burnham also stated in 2022 that men should be allowed to use women's toilets. I expect he'll U-turn on that as well in order to win the by-election. Vivian, thank you for that. Kieran is in East Yorkshire, England's biggest county. Good morning, Kieran.
Good morning. How are we all today? You well?
Great to have you on the show. Happy Wednesday. What's happening in East Yorkshire? How's the weather?
Do you know what? It's we're getting ready for a very warm week. Thankfully, I'm out of work for 10 days, so I'm going to be soaking up the sunshine in my garden as best as I can.
Perfect timing. So what about this then? Starmer versus old Andy Burnham. What do you think?
I think it's, in truth, against it. I know it sounds daft. I think it's an idiot versus an idiot. You've just got one that's a little bit more for the north than the other. In truth, I'd prefer Burnham over Starmer. Of course we would. You know, I come from a long line of a farming family, you know, where Labour have done absolutely no good for us. They promised us the world and then, of course, have made it even worse. It seems that anyone that talks against them is the people that are more impacted by it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the issue, isn't it? And what do you think he'll do? If he wins power, what do you think Andy Burnham is actually going to do with the country, Kieran?
In truth, I don't think he'll change much. I think he'll provide a little bit more money for us Northerners, but I think it's easy as a politician to stand back and go, well, you know, I know Keir's done this, I'm not very happy, but I'm not going to change.
Now, we've lost the line to Kieran, but Kieran, what a brilliant call. Thank you for your measured thoughts on that. Neil is in Buckinghamshire. Good morning, Neil.
Morning, Mark. I've got a quick question for you.
Go for it.
Every time you're saying about Andy Burnham against Keir Starmer, you're actually pushing Andy Burnham. You're giving him the headlines.
I'm elevating him.
Yeah, exactly. And people are now going to think, when they're up there thinking, right, if we vote Burnham, we're getting Starmer out. What the real question is, should a Reform candidate or Andy Burnham be better for the country? That should be the real question, because the Reform should be asking the questions of Andy Burnham about what he thinks a woman is. Can it have a penis?
Yeah.
What is his true fact on the EU? These questions, that when you get Richard Tice on your programme, ask him if they're going to bring these up, because no other media is going to bring these questions up. They're going to give Burnham a free ride. And that's the problem. Every time you mention Starmer against Burnham, you're pushing for Burnham. You might not think you are doing it, but that's how the voters, the thick Labour voters who say, oh, we voted Reform, but because Burnham's there now, I'm voting back Labour. They're thick.
So I think your suggestion is that if you argue that a vote for Burnham gets rid of Starmer, you're actually helping Labour.
Yes, because it's going to get the people that vote Reform. They think that Andy Burnham, because they are a little bit thick sometimes.
Interesting.
They think that Burnham is the king of the north, but the people I speak to, he's not. But there is enough people out there that would swing it for him to win. And as soon as he wins, he's going to become Prime Minister, because he'll beat Streeting, Angela will stand aside, Miliband won't stand, because they're all being promised big jobs.
Most definitely, because these politicians are cynical, aren't they, Neil? And they are completely ambitious. How do you think that? Do you think Reform can win this by-election then?
I think if they can, they raise the issues and bring up the failings of Burnham, like, for instance, the alleged cover-up of the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
Get Maggie Oliver on; she'll tell you how he covered things up. All these things, dirty tactics. They're gonna dig up everything about the Reform candidate. So now they've got to start doing. Politics is a dirty game now, unfortunately. It's not like the 70s or 80s. There's no respect. As soon as Angela Rayner said Tory scum in the Houses of Parliament, respect went out of politics.
And the gloves were off. What a brilliant call. Neil, very much enjoyed our conversation. Have a good Wednesday. We will speak soon. Herbie has called the show. Good morning, Herbie.
Good morning, Mark. You know, to stop HS2 would be a criminal act against, you know, all the damage that's been done to the landscape of the country. What a shame, you know, all these forests that have gone, these villages that have disappeared, and the amount of money. The politicians do not listen. We're going to have to keep paying this debt yet again from our pockets, because they just do what they want to do and not listen to the people. This is the biggest problem.
It's incompetence. And what I worry about, Herbie, I worry when politicians are involved in infrastructure because they make it about them. And it's the same with military procurement as well. Look at the horrible decisions that have been made in recent years regarding aircraft carriers.
Well, exactly. I mean, to say we've got aircraft carriers, but no planes.
Yeah.
I mean, to say how stupid can we get? Mark, the whole system, the whole political scene has gone beyond belief. You know, we've got people in there; they're ambitious, but they don't believe. They don't believe in the people. They don't listen to the people, which is what the problem is. They don't talk to them. They don't really care. You know, they got their little bonus and everything else and their money. They don't care about us any longer, Mark. We just got to keep paying for their mistakes time and time again, every time.
Well, this is the biggest worry I've got, Herbie, and it's highlighted by HS2, is incompetence. Those that govern us of various political colours don't know what they're doing.
Well, exactly. Mark, I've made a simple equation many, many years ago. When I make a mistake, I pay. When a government makes a mistake, I pay. When the banks make a mistake, I pay. When do I stop paying for other people's mistakes? Why is it that it always comes down on me?
And Herbie, I understand you've campaigned for Reform UK in the past, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Do you think they can win this by-election in Makerfield?
Well, it's the repair shop in action now. I mean, so if they talk to the people and go down there and address what they're there for, what they're going to do, and keep to it, they've got a good chance of doing it. You know, it's a case of, again, talking and listening to people with their concerns, their issues, what it is all about their area. Not about the policy, not about the party. What are the people looking for? What do they want you to do? And then take it on board and do it.
Brilliant call. Thank you for that, Herbie. We'll speak soon. Here's a voice note from Andrew on the by-election in Makerfield.
Good morning, Mark. Just a quick message from Andrew in North Yorkshire concerning the Makerfield by-election. For me, the key battle is less about party and more about a contest between a candidate who's worked in the productive part of the economy and one who personifies the lanyard class. We have far too many MPs currently whose careers, like Mr Burnham's, have existed in a political bubble. And I, for one, hope that Mr Kenyon triumphs. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Andrew. You raise a very good point. Andy Burnham is another of those career politicians, very lanyardy, never run a business in his life. Thank you for that, Andrew. Very interesting thoughts there. David's in Surrey. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Top of the morning. Right, what do you think about this? I mean, in the end, Reform are fighting this by-election. Some people think Burnham's going to win. What's your overview?
Well, I personally, I think, I've been following this for a long, long time. If people want change, they've got to vote Reform, because you're going to get much of the same with Burnham getting in, and Starmer's probably going to be there at the end of the day anyway. So what's the point? If you want change, vote Reform. You've got to start somewhere.
You can't say that Nigel Farage is not the change candidate. This is a guy that is a disruptor, and things will change if ultimately he becomes Prime Minister.
Hopefully they will, yes. Hopefully. That's what most people are voting for.
David, what do you think's going to happen in Makerfield? Do you think Reform can win?
I think they can. I think they fielded the right guy. He's local. Why not? But as I'm saying, if you don't want change, then vote for Burnham. That's simple as that. But at the end of the day, they're only using him so they can get into be the PM. So what's the point? You're going to get much of the same.
Brilliant stuff. What a great call. I think last call of the show. David, thank you for that. We'll speak again soon. Here's a voice note from Tony on the by-election.
Morning, Mark. Great show as usual. I just need to comment on the Makerfield by-election. Let's get straight here. The people are not stupid up north, yeah? So it's just like Burnham deciding to leave his kids in Manchester. Oh, then he goes and sets up and has kids up in Makersfield whilst not having nothing to do with his kids in Manchester. Oh, and then just to top it, he decides to have a fling with his brother's wife and screw everybody. Oh, how wonderful. Okay, wake up, because I have to have faith that the people of Makersfield are not that stupid and will see straight through this. It's disgusting. His morals are disgusting.
Tony, thank you for your heartfelt voice note. Of course, your reference to an affair was an analogy, a metaphor, but we take your point. Love the voice notes today. Love the calls. Love the texts as well. Love Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Oh, bless you.
Who I'm delighted to say is live at 10. Good morning.
I am indeed live at 10. I'm really gutted I've not got a supposed feminist T-shirt to wear, because Andy Burnham reckons that women like me think that men shouldn't be allowed in our toilet toilets and changing rooms, well, we're just a minority and we're supposed feminists.
A very small minority.
Very small minority, a small point, yeah. But I think the main issue today, definitely, and I'm sure you've been talking about it a lot again, is this idea of price freezes.
Crazy.
The idea, it's absolutely mad. I'm sorry, I know food has gone up in price, but actually, compared to what it was, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's much, much cheaper. If you walk around and see the fat people, I'm sorry, you don't have an obesity problem if food is too expensive.
Well,
it's absolute nonsense.
Interestingly, people often blame Brexit on rising food prices. Did you know that food price inflation has checked lower than that across the Eurozone since we left?
Yes, because of course it has. I mean, this is a mad thing. It's the fact the government's even looking at this. But then they had, Gemma Collins in. Off the telly. Gemma Collins into the Education Department. The Education Secretary wasted her time dealing with someone who got a G in her maths GCSE, for goodness sake.
Well, this is crazy.
They're not a serious government.
It's the same government that provokes and causes youth unemployment by hiking the minimum wage, because